I just got out of prison after 3 years. Before I left, I said goodbye to my master, a scruffy old man who saved me when I was getting beaten up by other inmates. He took me as his student and taught me martial arts and other skills. He told me something strange about myself. I have a true dragon bloodline, but someone removed my dragon bone. Because of that, a dark energy called grudge dragon chi is eating away at my body. If I don't fix it, I won't live past 18. His training helped me hold it back, but it's only temporary. To cure it for real, I either need to find a woman with a special body type to cultivate with, or find my stolen dragon bone. 3 years ago, when I was 15, my father Yi Tianxian made me take the blame for my older brother's crime. He said since I was underage, the sentence would be lighter. He promised me a good life when I got out, but not once did anyone from the family visit me in prison. I wasn't planning to go back to the Yi family at all, but my master told me my bloodline can't come from Yi Tianxian or my dead mother. They're both ordinary people, so either one or both of them aren't my real parents. I need to go back and figure out where I actually come from. When I got home, my father and his wife suddenly acted warm and caring, hugging me, cooking for me, asking about my time in prison. I didn't buy any of it. These are the same people who used to hit me and treated me like nothing. After over an hour of fake small talk, I cut him off and told him to just say what he really wants. Turns out, the Yi family is in trouble. The old patriarch is pressuring my father to give up his position as family head. To keep his seat, he needs someone to marry into the Jiang family as a live-in son-in-law. The Jiang family's eldest daughter had a car accident over a year ago and became a vegetable. Her face is ruined too. They want a groom to bring luck and lift the curse. My father and his wife had been arguing about who to sacrifice. They didn't want to send their precious son Yi Fei. Then they heard I was back from prison and got excited. A convict marrying a comatose woman. They called it a perfect match. So that's what my father's warmth was about. The moment I walked through the door, he was already planning to sell me off. He dressed it up nice, saying the Jiang family is wealthy and I'd never have to worry about money again. I asked him, if it's such a great deal, why not send my older brothers instead? I told my father I'd agree to the marriage, but only if he told me who my real father is. His face went stiff. He tried to deny it, but I pressed him. I said no real father would make his son go to prison for someone else, then marry him off to a woman in a coma. I released a bit of my aura to show him I'm not the helpless kid I used to be. He shook with fear. After that, he gave in and told me the truth. My mother was his first girlfriend. She got seriously sick. Her parents were gone, so she left me with him. He agreed to raise me because of their past, but he said he doesn't know who my real father is. I watched his face carefully. He wasn't lying, so the trail went cold. But at least I know my real father must carry dragon bloodline. If I find him, I might learn what happened to my dragon bone. The next day, I put on a suit and waited for the wedding procession. My older brother Yi Chen showed up and acted friendly, saying he'd remember my sacrifice. I told him straight. After today, I have nothing to do with the Yi family anymore. I walked out without looking back at any of them. Behind me, I heard them cursing me. His wife called me trash. My brother called me just a bastard. My father said they should go ask the old patriarch for rewards since their branch made the sacrifice. I heard every word. I made a silent promise. The Yi family will pay for this. I arrived at the Jiang family mansion. It was clear they were far wealthier than the Yi family. Inside, the father, Jiang Haiyun, looked at me with open disgust. He was angry the Yi family sent an ex-convict as a son-in-law. But the mother, Han Mengwan, told him to stop. She looked me over and seemed pleased, saying I was a fine-looking young man. On my way in, I passed an old man leaving, a famous doctor named Li Jingyuan. I overheard him mention the medicine emperor. That caught my attention, because the medicine emperor is actually my master, the old man from prison. He's a legend in the medicine and martial arts world, able to cure any disease. Most ordinary people have never heard of him. They held a simple wedding ceremony upstairs. When the servants brought out my bride, Jiang Junyao, I was surprised. They said she'd been disfigured, but she was actually beautiful. Long red wavy hair, a perfect face, a stunning figure. She was just very pale from being in a coma. After the ceremony, my mother-in-law handed me a bank card with 1 million yuan on it as a welcome gift. I tried to refuse, but she insisted. I couldn't figure out why she was being so kind to me. Turns out she had looked into my background. She saw that I went to prison for my brother and was now willing to marry her daughter for my family's sake. She respected that loyalty. She knew her daughter's condition wouldn't attract anyone impressive, and the Jiang family didn't need money. They needed someone with good character. After my mother-in-law Han Mengwan left me alone with Junyao, I took her pulse and got the shock of my life. She has a true phoenix body. My master had told me that finding someone with a special constitution was my best chance to neutralize the grudge dragon chi that's slowly killing me. And true phoenix is one of the two best types. I'd barely stepped out of prison and already stumbled into exactly what I needed, and somehow married her on top of it. I examined her more carefully and realized her condition wasn't what everyone thought. Yes, her brain took damage in the car accident, but that alone wouldn't keep someone in a permanent coma. The real problem was a rare poison called Baigan flower toxin, colorless, tasteless, and hidden deep in her blood and nervous system. No ordinary doctor would ever detect it. That's why every expert the Jiang family hired over the past year failed. They were treating the wrong thing. I formed 9 needles out of pure qi energy, a technique called forming needles from qi. It's something you'd only read about in ancient texts. I carefully inserted them into her acupuncture points. The needles started transparent, then slowly turned blood red as they drew out the toxin. After a few minutes, I pulled them out and the poison dripped into the trash can, giving off a faint sweet smell. I checked her pulse again. Most of the toxin was gone, but some remained. So I pushed some of my own qi into her body to help restore its vitality and planned to continue. That's when the nanny Wu Ma walked in with hot water, saw me leaning over Junyao with the blanket pulled back, and completely lost it. She ran out screaming and came back with both my in-laws. My father-in-law Jiang Haiyun immediately started calling me an animal, convinced I was trying to assault his unconscious daughter. My mother-in-law checked Junyao first, saw she was fine, and calmly asked me to explain. I told them I was treating her and that she'd been poisoned. My father-in-law burst out laughing and said I was lying. I hadn't even finished middle school before going to prison, so where would I learn medicine? He insisted the coma was purely from the car accident and had nothing to do with poison. I didn't bother arguing. They wouldn't believe me no matter what I said. Before things could settle down, the head butler announced visitors. Chun Meijing, the wife of the Jiang family's first branch, and her younger daughter Jiang Junlan. They came specifically to humiliate us. Chun Meijing pretended to be a concerned auntie, but every word was a knife. She called me a bastard and an ex-convict, said I was full of bad luck and would bring disaster instead of blessings, and mocked my mother-in-law for being desperate enough to marry her daughter to someone like me. I wasn't about to stand there and take it. I called her old auntie, told her she had a sour, mean face, and said the powder caked on it was thick enough to plaster a wall. She went crazy trying to scratch my face, but my mother-in-law blocked her and pointed out that a family elder attacking a younger member would be embarrassing if word got out. Chun Meijing calmed down and revealed her real purpose for coming. She announced that the family patriarch had chosen her son Jiang Junlong to become the new CEO of the Jiang Group, with the ceremony set for 1 month later. She also said the big partnership deal with the Huangfu family, the one my wife Junyao had worked so hard to set up before her accident, would now be handled entirely by the first branch. She warned us not to interfere. My mother-in-law was shaking with anger. A year ago, Junyao had done all the hard work connecting with the Huangfu family, but her car accident happened at the worst possible moment. While she lay unconscious, the first branch swooped in and stole everything. The deal, the credit, and all of Junyao's people inside the company. They either bought them off or fired them. The second branch had lost almost all influence in the family business. Chun Meijing kept twisting the knife, saying our branch was finished and had nobody left, not my weak father-in-law, and definitely not a convict son-in-law like me. My mother-in-law wanted to fight back, but couldn't find the words. Then, right at the peak of Chun Meijing's gloating, we all heard coughing from the bed. Everyone turned around. Junyao had opened her eyes. Junyao woke up, and the whole room went crazy. My mother-in-law rushed to her side, thrilled her daughter was alive again. My father-in-law started laughing and called his private doctors right away. The nanny and butler were overjoyed too. But Chun Meijing and her daughter looked like they'd swallowed something rotten. Their whole plan to humiliate us just backfired. The doctors came and examined Junyao. They were stunned. Just days ago her muscles were wasted, and her brain barely showed any activity. Now everything had recovered like magic. My father-in-law credited the Jiang family ancestors for protecting her, but my mother-in-law glanced over at me quietly. I could tell she was starting to connect the dots with what she'd walked in on earlier. She turned to Chun Meijing with the biggest smile and said her new son-in-law really was a lucky star. He'd barely walked through the door, and Junyao woke up. She even warned them to be careful, or their stolen CEO position might slip away. Chun Meijing cursed at us and stormed out with her daughter. After everyone left, my mother-in-law came up to me, calling me a good son-in-law and the family's lucky charm. But my father-in-law immediately said the marriage charade should end now that Junyao was awake. My mother-in-law exploded at him. She argued that I was the reason Junyao woke up. He insisted it was just coincidence and ancestors' blessings. They started fighting, and Junyao had to stop them, saying she wanted some quiet. Her parents left the room, but Junyao asked me to stay. She sat up against the headboard and looked at me with these beautiful but cold, proud eyes. She told me she understood the situation. Her mother had been desperate and arranged this marriage out of worry. She said we were strangers forced together, and it made no sense to stay married. She offered me 10 million yuan as thanks and asked me to agree to a divorce. 10 million. She said it like it was pocket change. I wasn't even slightly tempted, and she noticed. She seemed surprised that the number didn't faze me. I asked her how she knew we weren't from the same world, and whether she really understood anything about me. She told me she didn't like people who clung on without knowing their place. To her, I was nobody, an ex-convict who married in for a superstitious ritual. She wasn't even rude about it. She was just indifferent, like I was too small for her to bother looking down on. Part of me wanted to refuse, since I needed her true phoenix body to suppress my grudge dragon chi. But I have pride too. I won't beg anyone. If not her, I'll find another way. So I told her I had no objections to the divorce, as long as her parents agreed. I said it that way on purpose. I genuinely liked my mother-in-law. Since my own mother died, she was the first person who made me feel that kind of warmth again. I wasn't ready to throw that away. Junyao said she'd handle her mother and told me to leave so she could rest. At dinner, the whole family sat down together. Junyao immediately brought up the divorce in front of everyone. My mother-in-law's smile froze. My father-in-law laughed happily, saying they should head to the government office right after eating. But my mother-in-law slammed her chopsticks on the table and said nobody was divorcing anyone. She went off, saying all of Junyao's former suitors had run away the moment she became a vegetable, that I was the only one who stepped up. That Junyao woke up right after I arrived, and that I was a good person who'd gone to prison for his brother and sacrificed himself for his family. My father-in-law muttered that good people don't go to jail. She shut him down. She'd investigated my background and knew the full story. He tried calling me a bastard son, and she told him to shut his mouth. Then she gave Junyao an ultimatum. If she divorced me, she'd disown her as a daughter. She stormed upstairs without eating. I cleaned up the dishes and brought her a bowl of food. She took it and told me not to worry. As long as she was around, there would be no divorce. I smiled and nodded. In the next room, I could hear Junyao sighing. Later, Junyao made a phone call to someone she trusted, a woman called Shui. She ordered her to look into the car accident. Shui told her it was Jiang Junlong and the first branch who arranged it. Junyao wasn't surprised, but hearing it confirmed still hit her. She decided she wouldn't hold back anymore. She also asked about the Huangfu family's business situation in the city. Apparently, they were having trouble with a group called the White Wolf Society over some demolition deal. Couldn't agree on a price. Junyao told Shui to keep an eye on the situation and report anything new. Before hanging up, she asked Shui to investigate one more person, though she didn't say who. After the call, Junyao sat cross-legged on her bed and examined her own body. Her eyes went wide with shock. The Baigan flower poison inside her had become much weaker. She couldn't understand how that happened while she was unconscious. She didn't know it was me. Word about Junyao waking up spread fast through the upper circles of Jiangdu City. Young men who used to chase after her started showing up at the door, but my mother-in-law turned every single one of them away, telling them her daughter was already married. Junyao tried to convince her mother to let us divorce several more times, but each time she got scolded so badly she gave up. Finally, she came to me directly. She told me I was a decent guy with good character, but we just weren't right for each other. She said she had her reasons, something about her identity being special and that staying with her could actually put me in danger. I told her the same thing I always said. If her mom agrees, I'm fine with it. Since her mother wouldn't budge, Junyao proposed a compromise. We'd stay married on paper only. We'd live our own lives and not interfere with each other. She even said I could see other women, just don't bring them home. I agreed immediately. This was actually perfect for me. I still needed to find women with special body constitutions to help suppress my grudge dragon chi, and now I had permission to do so without looking like a jerk. Junyao seemed confused that I agreed so easily. She expected me to be jealous or possessive, but I didn't care at all. She took this as further proof that I was a pushover, a guy with no backbone who let his family sell him into prison and then into a marriage without fighting back. She was even more convinced we were from different worlds. She had no idea what I was really capable of. The next morning, my father-in-law complained that I was lounging around the house like a freeloader. My mother-in-law yelled at him, but I actually agreed. I should go out and do something. She wanted to find me a nice position at the company, but my father-in-law suggested I try collecting overdue payments that nobody else could get. He was clearly setting me up to fail. I accepted anyway. My mother-in-law told me not to push myself too hard. As soon as I stepped outside, my phone rang. It was Yi Tianqin. He'd heard Junyao had woken up and was kicking himself for sending me instead of his precious second son. He wanted me to set up a meeting between him and Junyao so he could suck up to the Jiang family. I almost laughed. After everything he'd done to me, he actually had the nerve to ask for a favor. I told him I was busy, that I had nothing to do with the Yi family anymore, and hung up. He called back several times. I blocked his number. Back at the Yi mansion, they were furious. His wife Xie Yushan came up with a nasty plan. She remembered that when I was in school years ago, I had a close female friend. She suggested they use that girl to threaten me into cooperating. The whole family agreed. My older brother Yi Yifei volunteered to handle it, and Yi Tianqin told him to keep things clean and not cause too big a mess. I left the Jiang mansion that morning without rushing to collect the overdue payments. Instead, I decided to take a walk around Jiangdu City. It had been 3 years since I'd been free, and I wanted to see how things had changed. By noon I was hungry, so I ducked into a small roadside noodle shop. Nothing fancy, just the kind of place I've always preferred, even now that I had money in my pocket. I'd barely sat down when I heard a girl's voice call my name. I looked up and saw this gorgeous young woman. Flawless pale skin, bright expressive eyes behind frameless glasses, a cute nose and cherry lips, tall with a perfect figure. For a second I had no idea who she was. Then it hit me. Sun Yuro, my classmate from middle school. Back then she was the invisible girl in class, short, hiding behind thick black glasses and long bangs. I could hardly believe she'd turned into such a beauty. The only reason I remembered her at all was because I'd once stepped in when she was being bullied, and after that we became close friends. She sat across from me, chin propped on her hands, and we started catching up. I teased her about becoming a goddess, and she blushed and said I'd changed too. Back in school, I barely talked to anyone. That was true. Living in the Yi household where I was constantly beaten and ignored had made me withdrawn. It wasn't until prison that I slowly opened up. She told me this noodle shop was her mother's, and she was helping out because it was Sunday. I told her I was married. Her face went through a flash of shock, and I caught a tiny hint of disappointment in her eyes, though she tried to hide it. She asked if I was still in school, and I shook my head. She said she was at university and wasn't in any hurry to date. I told her that was smart. Focus on studies, don't end up like me. Right then, a group of thugs stormed through the door. Yuro's expression changed instantly. She clearly knew them. The leader had dyed red hair and a nasty grin. He called Yuro, sister-in-law, while openly staring at her body. Yuro told him to stop with the disgusting nickname. Her mother came rushing out of the kitchen, face going pale the moment she saw them. Apparently some local gangster called Brother June had taken a liking to Yuro and had been sending these guys to pressure the family. The red-haired thug said if the mother agreed to hand over her daughter, they'd not only stop collecting protection fees, but would even pay to expand the shop. The mother tried to politely refuse, saying Yuro was still a student and not ready for relationships, and promised to keep paying the fees on time. The red-haired guy kicked over a chair so hard it crashed across the floor, then snarled that she was refusing a toast only to drink a penalty. He said Brother June wanting her daughter was an honor, and today Yuro was coming with them whether she liked it or not. otherwise they'd destroy the shop. The other customers scrambled out the door. Euro pulled out her phone to call the police, but a yellow-haired thug snatched it from her hands. He laughed and said even if police came, they'd only spend a few days locked up and then come right back. Unless the family wanted to close shop permanently, there was nothing they could do. They started smashing everything. Tables, chairs, stools. The sound of breaking would fill the shop. Euro and her mother retreated into the kitchen, terrified and heartbroken watching their livelihood being destroyed. Euro looked over at me, and for a moment I could see in her eyes a desperate wish that I'd step in like I did back in school. But she quickly shook her head. She figured one person couldn't handle several armed thugs, and she just hoped I'd leave before getting hurt. The yellow-haired thug noticed me still sitting there calmly eating and told me to get lost. When I didn't move, he swung his palm at my face, cursing. I caught his wrist mid-swing and twisted. The clean snap of bone echoed through the shop. He let out a horrible scream. I tossed him across the room like he weighed nothing. The red-haired leader went purple with rage. He pulled out a knife and charged at me. Euro screamed for me to dodge. But I took them all down in a few punches and kicks. It was effortless, like swatting flies. 3 years of training under my master had made me something these street thugs couldn't begin to handle. The red-haired guy lay groaning on the floor, still trying to act tough. He threatened me, saying Brother June was connected to the White Wolf Society and I was a dead man. I walked over and placed my foot on his face, then slowly pressed down. He howled in agony. I asked him to repeat what he just said. I didn't catch it. He kept screaming about how I was finished, so I pressed harder until he was convinced his skull was about to crack. Only then did he finally break, begging and crying for mercy. I lifted my foot. The other thugs all had their heads down, silent, too scared to even look at me. The red-haired guy scrambled up and turned to run, but I called out to him. Stop. Did I say you could leave? I made the red-haired thug pay 50,000 yuan for the damage. Way more than the broken tables were worth, but after what they did, I didn't care. He whined that he didn't have the money, so I told him he could either find it or leave a hand behind. He and his buddies scraped together the cash through loans and credit apps. I refused to take any of it myself and left it all with Euro's mother. She tried to give it to me, but I wouldn't accept. They warned me that Brother June and the White Wolf Society would come after me. I told them not to worry. Those guys were trash, and I wasn't afraid. Euro and I exchanged contact info before I left, and I told her to call me if they came back. After leaving the noodle shop, I checked my phone and found a message from my father-in-law with a list of clients who owed the Jiang company money. There were over 10 of them. The biggest debt was from a company called White Wolf Security, over 5 million yuan. I looked them up and found a branch office nearby, so I took a taxi over. The area around the building was being demolished for redevelopment. Just as I arrived, a red Bentley pulled up and 2 women got out. One was a bodyguard in black leather and sunglasses. The other was a stunning woman in a black office outfit, easily as beautiful as Jun Yao, with an elegant, noble air about her. I looked at her a moment too long, and the bodyguard, Dongmei, threatened to gouge my eyes out. The beautiful woman told her to calm down. When I followed them into the building, Dongmei warned me she'd break my legs. I told her I wasn't following them. I was here on business too. She asked what business, and I said I was collecting a debt. She laughed at me for coming alone to a place like this. I pointed at the sign above the door and asked if she was too stupid to read it herself. That shut her up, though she was furious. Inside, 2 large men in black suits greeted the woman as Miss Huangfu and led her upstairs. Because I walked in with them, the guards assumed I was part of her group and didn't stop me. So this was someone from the Huangfu family, the same powerful family whose business deal my wife Jun Yao had been working on before her accident. We ended up in a fancy office on the top floor where a mean-looking bald man sat behind the desk. His name was Li Zhengxiong, officially a branch manager of White Wolf Security, but actually one of the 4 hall masters of the White Wolf Society, one of the 2 biggest underground organizations in Jiangdu City. So the security company was just a front. He greeted Miss Huangfu warmly and ordered his secretary to bring out his best tea. She got straight to business. She wanted him to agree to vacate the building for the demolition project. He played dumb, talking about how much work they'd put into the place. She cut him off and told him to name his price. He held up 5 fingers and smiled. 500 million yuan to move out. Dongmei exploded when she heard the 500 million demand. pointing out the building cost 50 million at most. Baldy Li didn't flinch. He poured tea for everyone and said the price was negotiable. But when Huangfu Shuriwei refused to drink, he told them to leave. Dongmei threatened him, and he fired back that he'd survived decades in the underworld and wasn't scared of anyone. Shuriwei tried to get him to name a real price. He wouldn't answer until she drank his tea. She gave in and took a sip, then demanded he talk. He dropped the act and made his real demand. He wanted Shuriwei to spend one night with him. Dongmei lost it and attacked him. The two of them fought hard. I could tell they were both body-forging martial artists, around level 7 or 8. Dongmei was slightly stronger and started gaining the upper hand. But Baldy Li wasn't worried. He slammed a red button on his desk, and alarms screamed through the whole building. Within seconds, a swarm of men in black rushed in and surrounded all of us, me and Shuriwei included. With backup, Baldy Li turned the fight around fast and kicked Dongmei across the room. She hit the floor bleeding and was pinned down immediately. I realized then that the Huangfu family was the same one working with the Jiang family on the big deal Junyao had set up before her accident. Running into their eldest daughter here was pure coincidence. Even captured, Shuriwei stayed calm and warned him that touching her would bring the full wrath of the Huangfu family. He just laughed and asked if she'd ever wondered why a White Wolf Society Hall master would dare move against her. Her face darkened. She guessed there was a traitor inside the Huangfu family. He confirmed it without naming who. Shuriwei revealed she was actually at body forging level 9, stronger than anyone in the room. That's why she'd come with just one bodyguard. But Baldy Li just smiled. The tea she drank had been drugged, not poison, but some kind of arousal drug. She started flushing red as the drug took effect, and no matter how hard she tried to push it out with her chi, it wouldn't work. Then a door opened, and two more people walked out. A tall, arrogant young man and a thin old man with gray hair. Baldy Li bowed to the young man and called him Young Master Kai. It was Sima Kai. Shuriwei recognized him instantly, and her face went cold. This whole thing had been a setup from the beginning. Sima Kai told her he planned to force himself on her, then show up at her family's door to propose marriage. Once the deed was done, she'd have no choice. Shuriwei said her father would never agree, but Sima Kai laughed. He said plenty of people in the Huangfu family actually wanted her married off, and her father couldn't stop all of them. She threw a desperate punch at his face, but the old man beside him blocked it effortlessly. He was also level 9, same as Shuriwei, but she was weakened by the drug. Her face went white with despair. Sima Kai ordered the old man to tie her up and drag her to a bed. I watched all of this unfold, and the old man was closing in on her. Just as the old man was closing in on Shuriwei, I spoke up. I told them it was pathetic, a bunch of grown men using dirty tricks against a woman. Everyone turned to look at me. Baldy Li was confused. He'd assumed I was with Shuriwei's group this whole time. Shuriwei looked at me like a drowning person spotting a piece of driftwood, begging me to save her and promising a huge reward. Sima Kai clapped his hands and called me brave, then his face turned ugly. He said if I wanted to play hero, I should kneel, and he'd generously only break my legs, leaving my hands so I could beg for a living. He and Baldy Li both laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. I told Sima Kai I liked his idea. I'd leave him his hands too. Baldy Li charged at me first. One punch was all it took. Our fists collided and his arm shattered. He flew across the room spewing blood. Everyone went silent. He was a level 8 body forging fighter, and I'd crippled him in a single blow. Sima Kai sent his old man next. The gray-haired elder called Old Zhou, who was at level 9, same as Shuriwei. He warned me to surrender or I'd wish I was dead. I didn't bother answering. I just raised my middle finger. He lunged at me like lightning, but I stepped aside and slapped him on the ribs. He crashed into the wall, vomited blood, and passed out cold. One move. A level 9 expert, finished just like that. The room was dead quiet. Everyone was doing the math. If I could one-shot a level 9 fighter, I had to be at the Meridian Opening Master level. For someone my age, that was unheard of. Shuriwei realized she was safe and finally let her guard down. That was a mistake. The drug flooding her system took over completely. Her face turned bright red. She started tearing at her own clothes, and she was losing control. Dongmei broke free from the stunned guards and rushed to hold her up. Sima Kai recovered from his shock and started threatening me again, saying he'd kill me and my whole family. That crossed a line. I moved so fast he didn't see it coming, grabbed him by the throat, and lifted him off the ground. He turned purple, veins bulging on his forehead, choking out threats about the Coma family's power. I squeezed a little tighter. Before I could finish him, the office doors burst open and nearly 100 men in black poured in, surrounding the entire room. Baldy Lee had secretly called for backup. He dragged himself off the floor, smug again now that the numbers had swung his way. I let go of Sima Kai. He scrambled behind Baldy Lee, gasping and rubbing his neck. Then he screamed for his men to break all 4 of my limbs. He wanted to turn me into a human stump for humiliating him. Baldy Lee pulled a handgun from his desk drawer and pointed it at me. He said with 100 men and a gun, there was no way I was walking out alive. Dongmei's heart sank. She knew even a peak body-forging fighter couldn't dodge bullets. Only a true Meridian opening master had any chance, and even then it wasn't guaranteed. She didn't believe someone as young as me could possibly be at that level. I looked at the crowd of men, looked at the gun, and asked Baldy Lee if he was really that confident. Baldy Lee pointed the gun at me and told me to surrender for a quick death. I just smirked and curled my finger at him, daring him to shoot. He pulled the trigger. The bullet flew straight at me. I reached up with 2 fingers and caught it midair. The whole room went dead silent. Nobody could believe what they'd just seen. Not even a Meridian opening master should be able to do that. Sima Kai screamed at his men to rush me, offering 100 million to whoever killed me. One big guy charged with a cleaver, while Baldy Lee fired 2 more shots at my head and heart. I caught both bullets with one hand, then flicked the first bullet I'd caught at the big guy's knee. It shattered his kneecap instantly. Everyone froze. Then I flicked the other 2 bullets into Sima Kai's knees. He collapsed screaming, 2 bloody holes blown through both legs. I looked around the room and asked if anyone else wanted to try. Nobody moved. Sima Kai was losing his mind from pain and rage, screaming that he'd kill my whole family. I'd been holding back because I'd just gotten out of prison and didn't want trouble, but he kept pushing. I turned to Baldy Lee and gave him a choice. Pick up that cleaver and cut off Sima Kai's arms, or die. He hesitated until Sima Kai mocked him for being a coward. That was the last straw. Baldy Lee grabbed the knife and chopped off both arms, blood spraying across his face. Then I told every man in the room to go up and give Sima Kai 1 cut each. They all did it. Even the guy whose knee I destroyed crawled over and gave the hardest slash. Sima Kai died by 100 cuts, never believing until the end that I'd actually go through with it. When the old man woke up and tried to run, I threw a teacup through the back of his skull. I told Baldy Lee to clean everything up and keep his mouth shut. He agreed instantly. Everyone in that room had blood on their hands now, so nobody would talk. Then I turned my attention to Shuriwe. The drug had completely taken over. She was flushed red, tearing at her own clothes, moaning. Dongmei was holding her back. I told them to put her on the couch so I could remove the drug. Dongmei immediately thought the worst and told me to get lost, swearing she'd kill me if I touched her mistress. I told her I meant using qi to purge the poison, and she turned red with embarrassment. I sealed Shuyue's movement points, pressed my palms against hers, and channeled qi into her body. That's when I discovered something incredible. She had a special constitution too, called Moonlight Body, which lets her absorb lunar energy for cultivation. Extremely rare. Between Juanyao's true phoenix body and now this, my luck was almost absurd. The qi pushed the drug out through her pores as sweat. After about 20 minutes, she was back to normal. She thanked me and asked my name. I told her, Yi Chu, while admittedly staring a bit too long. Her clothes were soaked through and clinging to every curve, with 2 buttons torn off from earlier. Dongmei caught me looking and started yelling at me. Shuriwe glanced down, turned bright red, and quickly turned away. After everything settled down, Shuriwe made Baldy Lee confess who the traitor in the Huangfu family was, a man named Huangfu Jia. She warned Baldy Lee to vacate the building within a week or she'd wipe out the White Wolf Society entirely. Before leaving, I reminded Baldy Lee about the debt he owed the Jiang Company. He offered 600 million, the full amount plus a little extra. I told him that wasn't enough. After all that time, there should be interest. I demanded 50 million total. He nearly fainted but paid up without argument. I had him send 6 million to the Jiang Company's finance department and the rest to me personally. Not a bad payday. Shuriwe insisted on treating me to dinner. In the car, she asked if I was local. She'd researched all the major players in Jiangdu before coming and had never heard of me. She kept calling me Mr. Yi, which felt awkward since she was older than me. She suggested we become sworn siblings instead. She'd be the older sister. I liked that idea immediately. She told me her name was Huangfu Shuriwe, and I started calling her Sister Shuriwe. We stopped at a mall so she could change clothes, then headed to Jianghuai Pavilion, the fanciest restaurant in Jiangdu. Dongmei told the staff we had a reservation for the Emperor Room, the most exclusive private dining room in the place. Shortly after we went upstairs, four young people walked in. Their leader was someone called Qin Donyang, apparently a rich young master in the city. He demanded the Emperor Room too. The manager explained it was already taken, but Qin Donyang insisted on going up anyway. The manager came into our room and asked us to switch to a different room. Shuriwei refused flat out. Dongmei slammed the table and told him to get lost before she tore the place apart. The manager left in a huff and reported back to Qin Donyang. Qin Donyang pushed open our door himself. The moment he saw Shuriwei, his eyes lit up with desire. Then he noticed me and sneered. He recognized me as the Jiang family's live-in son-in-law. He started mocking me, saying I was probably too useless to even share a bed with Jun Yao, which is why I was out here with another woman. He called me a convict and a loser, then told Shuriwei she was wasting herself on trash like me. Shuriwei shut him down coldly, telling him she didn't need his advice. That only excited him more. Then his friend, a darker-skinned guy named Zhao San, walked in, took one look at Shuriwei, and offered her 1,000,000 yuan a month to be his girlfriend. Zhao Sun offered Sister Shuriwei 1,000,000 a month to be his girlfriend. Before I could react, Dongmei was already moving. She slapped him so hard he flew across the room, spitting blood and teeth onto the floor. He called her a foul name, so she kicked him into the wall and broke several of his ribs. Qin Donyang went crazy, calling for security. The restaurant manager, Li Muda, showed up and called in a whole squad of guards. Shuriwei released her aura and froze them in place, but Li Muda pushed them forward, promising bonus money from his cousin, the store manager. Dongmei beat them all down in seconds. Li Muda called his cousin Lu Shanchuan, the store manager, who came in and immediately took Qin Donyang's side, without even asking what happened. The moment he heard I was the Jiang family's live-in son-in-law, he decided I was the troublemaker. He mocked me for being a convict and a freeloader and demanded I kneel and apologize. Li Muda added that Shuriwei should spend a month with Qin Donyang and his friend to make up for the disrespect. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Shuriwei found it almost funny. She casually mentioned the name Huangfu Yun, the actual owner of this restaurant and a member of the Huangfu family. That made Lu Shanchuan nervous, but Qin Donyang brushed it off, saying anyone hanging around a loser like me couldn't possibly be important. Shuriwei pulled out her phone and made one call. She told whoever answered to get to the Emperor Room at Jianghuai Pavilion within 30 minutes or pack their bags. Li Muda laughed and called it an act. Qin Donyang said even if she knew the owner, his Qin family wasn't to be messed with. Shuriwei just said coldly, "The Qin family? I'll remember that." About 20 minutes later, a man in his 30s came rushing in, out of breath. It was Huangfu Yun himself. Lu Shanchuan's face went white. Huangfu Yun walked right past him without a glance, went straight to Shuriwei, and bowed, calling her eldest miss and apologizing for not knowing she was coming. Huangfu Yun was practically shaking in front of Sister Shuriwei. She told him to keep his people in line and stop embarrassing the Huangfu family name. He bowed and asked what had happened. Lu Shanchuan was trembling too hard to speak, so the security guards told the truth, that it was Qin Donyang and his group who started everything, and that the manager and his cousin had taken their side without asking questions. Huangfu Yun nearly stumbled when he heard the full story. He fired Lu Shanchuan and Li Muda on the spot, dismissed all the guards who tried to lay hands on Shuriwei, and banned Qin Donyang and Zhao Sun from ever stepping foot in Jianghuai Pavilion again. But Shuriwei wasn't done with Qin Donyang. As he was slinking toward the door, she told him to deliver a message to Old Man Qin. The Qin family was cut out of the South City Development Project. He nearly tripped over his own feet. He knew he'd made a catastrophic mistake, and he ran out of there without looking back. After everyone cleared out, Shuriwei apologized to me for the drama. I told her not to worry. Any big operation has a few rotten people in it. The waiters brought out a feast, and we ate and talked for over an hour. She was clearly burning with curiosity about why someone with my abilities would become a live-in son-in-law, but I told her it was a long story for another day. She was smart enough not to push. When we finished, I told her I had a small gift for her in return for the meal. We added each other on WeChat, and I sent her a message, a list of Chinese medicine ingredients. She stared at her phone in confusion. I explained it was a prescription for a medicinal bath. If she followed it for 4 or 5 treatments, the hidden injuries she'd accumulated from years of martial arts training would heal completely. Her eyes went wide. She asked how I could possibly know about her internal injuries. It was a secret only she and Dongmei knew. Not even the Huangfu family was aware. She'd quietly sought help from famous doctors before, and none of them could do anything. I just smiled and said I could see it. She realized I had serious medical skills and looked at me with even more curiosity than before. Then she asked me a favor. She had a close friend who was seriously ill. Doctors everywhere had failed to help. She wanted me to take a look. I agreed without hesitation and asked when we should go. She stood up and said right now. On our way out, Huang Fuyun was waiting respectfully in the hallway. He handed Shuriwei a special VIP card for the restaurant, a supreme tier membership that let the holder eat for free anytime. She passed it straight to me. I accepted it with a smile. Huang Fuyun watched the whole exchange with wide eyes, clearly realizing I held a significant place in Shuriwei's world. I could see him memorizing my face. We drove to a luxurious estate on the outskirts of the city. The gate was guarded by tall, muscular men in black suits, their temples bulging with developed muscles, a sign of trained fighters. Whoever lived here was clearly powerful and well-protected. A butler came out and greeted Shuriwei, saying the lady of the house was entertaining guests and had sent him to escort us inside. Dongmei went to park the car while I followed Shuriwei and the butler into a grand villa. Inside, 5 people were seated in the living room. The woman Shuriwei had mentioned was in terrible shape. Her face was gaunt and lifeless, her eyes dull, her body giving off a weak, fading energy. She looked like someone who didn't have long to live. But even ravaged by illness, she carried herself with elegance. You could tell she'd once been a striking beauty. A refined middle-aged man sat beside her, clearly her husband. Across from them sat 3 others, a blonde foreigner with a high-bridged nose, a bald middle-aged man wearing glasses, and an old man with white hair. When the sick woman saw Shuriwei walk in, her face lit up with genuine happiness. She tried to stand, but was so weak she stumbled. Her husband caught her quickly and told her to sit back down. Her name was Jingxian. Sister Shuriwei introduced me to her friend Li Jingxian, a woman who looked like she was on death's doorstep. Her face was hollow, her eyes had no light, and her whole body radiated weakness. You could tell she used to be beautiful, but the illness had eaten away at her. Her husband, a refined man named Huang Haijun, sat next to her looking worried sick. Across from them were 3 people, a blonde foreigner, a bald middle-aged man with glasses, and an old man with white hair. I recognized the old man right away. It was Li Jingyuan, the same national-level doctor I'd seen leaving the Jiang mansion not long ago, the one who'd mentioned my master the medicine emperor. He noticed me too and studied me with curiosity. The moment Shuriwei told them I was a doctor who could cure Jingxian, the bald guy jumped in and started lecturing me. He said I looked like I hadn't even graduated college and had no business treating patients. He went on about how young people should be humble and grounded instead of biting off more than they could chew. He acted like some kind of important official giving a speech. I told him to mind his own business. 4 words, nothing more. That turned his face purple with rage. He started yelling about how I was being disrespectful in front of the city leader. Apparently Huang Haijun held some kind of government position, and Baldy was his secretary or assistant, constantly sucking up. Shuriwei shut him down with an icy warning. The husband stepped in to smooth things over, but then politely told Shuriwei that with Dr. Li and the foreign doctor named George already here, they probably didn't need me. I could tell he didn't believe someone my age could do anything useful. I didn't push it. I told Shuriwei it was fine, and I'd just hang around and watch. Li Jingyuan examined Jingshuan's pulse for a long time. When he finished, his face was troubled. He said her heart meridian was failing, but he couldn't figure out why. She was only 30. There was no reason for her heart to be giving out like this. He asked if she had any history of heart problems or family genetic conditions. The husband said no, she'd always been perfectly healthy. Li Jungyuan admitted he could only slow down the deterioration at best. He couldn't cure it. The husband's face went white. If a national-level doctor couldn't help, what hope was there? That's when Baldy jumped in again, pushing the foreign Dr. George forward. He said George was a top heart transplant expert from America with many successful cases. The husband looked torn. Heart transplants were extremely risky, and he didn't want to gamble with his wife's life. George spoke in clumsy Chinese, saying he was leaving the country in 3 days and the husband needed to decide fast. Then he added something that made my blood boil. He called Chinese medicine a scam and said putting any hope in it was basically sentencing Jingxian to death. Li Jungyuan fired back, defending Chinese medicine as a tradition stretching back thousands of years. George sneered and asked why. If it was so amazing, Li couldn't cure the patient. Li Jungyuan went quiet for a moment, then said his own limitations didn't represent all of Chinese medicine. The bald guy piled on, saying most Chinese medicine practitioners were frauds and the whole field would be extinct soon. That did it for me. Hearing a Chinese person trash his own heritage made me angrier than listening to the foreigner. I told Baldy he was a disgrace, someone who'd forgotten his roots and worshipped foreign things. Our ancestors' knowledge was being destroyed by garbage like him. He shook with fury but couldn't form a response. George turned to me calmly and asked if I was also a Chinese medicine practitioner. I nodded and said I knew a little. Then I looked at Jingxian and said that treating her condition should be well within my ability. The room went silent. Baldy mocked me for being arrogant. Even Li Jungyuan frowned. He clearly doubted someone my age could have mastered something so complex. George smiled and invited me to demonstrate, saying he'd love to see if Chinese medicine was really as powerful as I claimed. I looked at Huang Haijun. No matter how confident I was, I needed his permission before touching his wife. He thanked me politely, but said Jingxian was too fragile for any experiments right now. He wanted Li Jungyuan to prescribe some medicine first and stabilize her condition before trying anything else. Huang Haijun's refusal was polite but obvious. If it weren't for Sister Shiyue's status, he would have kicked me out already. The bald secretary sneered at me again, saying someone of Madame Huang's standing couldn't just be examined by anyone off the street. I shrugged and told Shiyue we should leave. As my master's disciple, I wasn't going to beg anyone to let me treat them. Shiyue's face darkened too. She'd brought me here out of genuine concern, and they were treating us like con artists. But she couldn't bear watching her friend waste away, so she tried one more time, asking Jingxian directly to let me take a look. Jingxian, who seemed more open-minded than her husband, agreed and gently told him to let me try. Even George the foreigner chimed in, saying he was curious to see what Chinese medicine could do. Huang Haijun finally gave in, but not without warning me to stay within my abilities and not do anything reckless that might hurt his wife. I didn't respond to that. If it weren't for Shiyue and my desire to shut that arrogant foreigner's mouth about Chinese medicine, I would have walked out the door without looking back. I took Jingxuan's pulse, though I'd actually already scanned her body with my spiritual sense the moment I walked in. I knew exactly what was wrong. I just didn't want to reveal abilities that would raise too many questions. After the pulse reading, I announced that her condition was easy to treat. All I needed to do was kill the goo worm nesting inside her heart. The room erupted. The bald secretary burst out laughing, asking if I thought we were filming a TV drama. George smirked and said this proved Chinese medicine was nothing but tricks and superstition. Huang Haijun looked furious and told Shiyue to be more careful about who she brought around in the future. Shiyue looked at me uncertainly, so I explained clearly. Jingxian had been infected with a heart-devouring goo, a parasitic worm that was currently dormant but slowly feeding on the blood energy of her heart meridian. That was why her heart was deteriorating. If the worm woke up, she would die. The bald guy yelled that I was spouting nonsense and suggested Huang Haijun have me arrested and interrogated as a possible threat to his wife. But before anyone could respond, Li Jungyuan, the old national-level doctor, spoke up. He confirmed that goo worms were real. He'd personally seen one before. The room went quiet. Li Jungyuan carried too much credibility for anyone to dismiss. He did raise a question, though. Goo worms only existed in the southern border regions, thousands of miles from Jiangdu. How could Madame Huang have been infected here? Huang Haijun's attitude changed instantly. He looked at me with desperate eyes and asked if his wife really had this heart-devouring goo. I gave him a look like he was stupid and asked what I'd gained from lying to him. The bald secretary tried to scold me for being disrespectful, but this time Huang Haijun told him to shut up himself. Then he turned back to me with an awkward smile and asked me to please save his wife. He finally understood. I diagnosed something that even Li Jingyuan had missed. I asked Li Jingyuan if he had silver needles on him. He did, and handed me a case. The bald guy piped up one last time, saying a real Chinese medicine doctor would carry his own needles, and I was clearly a fraud. I'd had enough of him. I looked him dead in the eye and asked what he'd do if I cured Madame Huang. He laughed and said if I could cure her, he'd kneel down and call me Grandpa. I smiled and told him to remember those words. He glanced nervously at George, who reassured him confidently that the heart was too damaged for anything but a transplant. George crossed his arms and watched me with amused curiosity, waiting to see me fail. I told Jingxian it might hurt and asked her to bear with it. She smiled softly and told me to go ahead. I opened the needle case, picked up the silver needles one by one, and launched them into the acupuncture points surrounding her heart. My hands moved so fast that everyone only saw blurred afterimages. By the time they blinked, all the needles were already in place. Li Jingyuan's eyes went wide and his breathing quickened. He could tell from that single display that my medical skills far exceeded his own. I connected invisible threads of qi from my fingertips to the tail of each needle and began manipulating them with tiny movements. The needles started vibrating gently, then slowly turned red as heat built up. A burning sensation spread through the air. Jingshuan's face twisted in pain, sweat rolling down her forehead in fat droplets. Huang Haijun watched tensely but didn't dare interrupt. Then small flames burst from the ends of the needles and flowed like streams of fire down into Jingshuan's body. Li Jingyuan let out a cry of shock. Scarlet Flame Divine Needles. Could this really be the Scarlet Flame Divine Needles? Everyone turned to stare at him, but he wasn't paying attention to any of them. His eyes were locked on me, burning with disbelief and barely contained excitement. I understood why. The Scarlet Flame Divine Needle technique was the legendary signature creation of the Medicine Emperor, my master. Li Jingyuan had just connected the dots. He knew I was tied to the Medicine Emperor, and from the look on his face, I could tell he'd also just figured out the truth about Juanyao's miraculous recovery. Jingxian screamed in agony as the fire reached deeper. I focused my energy and commanded the goo worm to come out. Something squirmed under Jingshuan's skin near her chest, making everyone's scalp tingle. Then her clothing tore open slightly, and a blood-red shape shot out, trying to escape. I fired a silver needle and pinned it to the far wall. Everyone stared. It was a grotesque crimson worm covered in strange patterns. The goo worm was real, and now they could all see it with their own eyes. I immediately sealed the wound on Jingshuan's chest with needles and pumped qi into her weakened body. Color returned to her face within minutes. When her husband asked how she felt, she smiled and said she felt lighter than she had in a long time. She called me Little Miracle Doctor. I wrote out a prescription and told Huang Haijun that 3 or 4 rounds of the medicine would restore her completely. His attitude did a complete reversal. He thanked me over and offered to help me with anything in the future. I told him it was no big deal. Just stop judging people by appearances next time. He nodded, embarrassed. Li Jingyuan was staring at me with open admiration. He said he never imagined someone so young could master the Scarlet Flame Divine Needles, and he tried to probe my connection to the Medicine Emperor. I didn't take the bait, but I accepted the silver needle case he offered as a gift. We exchanged contact information. I could tell he wanted to build a relationship, and I didn't mind. He was a good doctor with a genuine respect for Chinese medicine. Then I noticed the bald secretary Zhang Dequan trying to sneak away. I stopped him and reminded him of his promise. He tried to weasel out, saying he'd been talking nonsense and offering me favors as a hospital director instead. I told him a hospital director meant nothing to me. Huang Haijun stepped in and told Zhang to keep his word. With no way out, the bald guy gritted his teeth, dropped to his knees, called me Grandpa, and fled the room. That felt satisfying. George the foreigner had been studying the goo worm on the wall, completely fascinated. When I pulled the needle out and asked if he still thought Chinese medicine was a scam, he shook his head rapidly and admitted he was amazed. His instruments had found nothing, yet this living creature had been hiding inside a human heart the whole time. Then he dropped to his knees and asked me to take him as a student, saying he knew that in our country, apprentices had to kneel. I stopped him quickly and told him I wasn't taking disciples. He left looking genuinely disappointed. We stayed for dinner at the Huang family's insistence. Huang Haijun personally poured wine and toasted me as an apology. Before we left, Jingxian gave me a gold membership card for the Jiangnan Chamber of Commerce. Good for free spending at any of their affiliated businesses. I pocketed it without fuss. Outside, it was already getting dark. I said goodbye to Sister Shuriwei and took a taxi toward the Jiang mansion. Halfway there, my phone rang from an unknown number. I assumed it was Yi Tianxin trying to reach me from a different phone and hung up. But the call came again. I answered irritably. It was the red-haired thug from that morning. He told me to come to the Dynasty nightclub in the south side of the city if I wanted to save my little girlfriend. Then I heard Yuro's voice, scared, crying, trying to warn me not to come before someone cut her off. My blood went cold. Those bastards had grabbed Yuro. I told them if they touched her, they'd face consequences they couldn't imagine. The voice on the other end laughed and told me to hurry, then hung up. I told the taxi driver to change course immediately, south side, Dynasty nightclub. I rushed to the Dynasty nightclub as fast as I could, throwing extra money at the taxi driver to floor it. The whole ride there, my blood was boiling. Those thugs from this morning had grabbed Yuro to get back at me, and every second I wasted was a second she was in danger. When I arrived at the front door, the yellow-haired thug from earlier was already waiting for me. He tried to act tough, asking if I really dared to show up. I wasn't in the mood for games. I told him to shut up and lead the way. Something in my eyes must have terrified him because he didn't say another word, just turned around and walked. We passed through the ground floor disco hall, blasting music and flashing lights everywhere, people dancing and drinking without a care. As we moved through the crowd, one of Baldy Lee's men, who happened to be there because his boss had come to drink and relax after the rough day I'd given him, thought he recognized my back. But he shook it off, figuring there was no way the monster who'd humiliated them earlier would show up at a place like this. He had no idea how wrong he was. What I didn't know yet was what had been happening in that upstairs room while I was on my way. The thug called Wang Jun, Brother Jun, the one who'd been harassing Yuro's family, had been trying to force himself on her. He'd had his woman slap Yuro across the face and taunt her, calling her names. When Yuro refused to give in, saying she'd rather die than let an animal like him touch her, that trashy woman told one of the guys to force a blue pill down Yuro's throat, some kind of drug. They held her down and made her swallow it. The drug hit fast, making her flush red and lose control of herself. Wang Jun was about to assault her right then and there, but got interrupted twice. First when a lackey told him Baldy Lee had arrived downstairs, which sent him scrambling to go pay respects, and then when the red-haired thug reported that I had arrived. Wang Jun had prepared everything. Dozens of armed men were waiting in the next room, ready to surround me on his signal. He sat down on the couch like a king, waiting for me to be brought in. The moment I walked through that door, I saw Yuro on the couch, face flushed, sweating, barely conscious, clothes torn. She saw me, and her eyes lit up with hope. She tried to get up and run to me, but that woman shoved her back down and slapped her again, sneering about how the real show hadn't even started yet. Something inside me snapped. I could feel the veins pulsing on my forehead. That woman saw my rage and actually smiled, trying to provoke me even more. I didn't say a word. I just started walking toward Yuro. Wang Jun told me to stop, or he'd break my legs. I kept walking. One of his guys stepped forward to block me, yelling in my face. I backhanded him across the room without breaking stride. Wang Jun's expression turned ice cold. The red-haired thug grabbed his walkie-talkie, and within seconds, dozens of armed thugs poured into the room and surrounded me. Bats, knives, pipes, the works. Wang Jun stood up with a smug grin and started lecturing me about how the world works. He said being good at fighting meant nothing without connections and power behind you. He bragged about being part of the White Wolf Society, about having dozens of men under his command, about having the background and the muscle to crush anyone who challenged him. He had no idea that just hours ago, I'd made his boss Baldy Lee chop off a man's arms and watched 100 of his colleagues help me kill someone. The White Wolf Society meant nothing to me, but Wang Jun was about to find that out the hard way. Wang Jun told me to kneel and watch while he had his way with Yuro. He said if I behaved, maybe he'd let me go. I smiled at him and told him I'd met someone just as arrogant that morning, except that guy was already dead. He ordered his men to attack. Dozens of them rushed me with bats, knives, and pipes. I grabbed a trident blade from the first guy, swung it once, and sent several of them flying. After that, it was like a dance, dodging, striking, moving through the crowd. Every hit sent someone crashing to the floor. In less than a minute, every single one of them was down, bleeding and groaning. The red-haired thug from earlier watched with pure terror in his eyes. Even Wang Jun was stunned silent. He tried to recruit me into the White Wolf Society. I told him the White Wolf Society wasn't worthy of my service. That pushed him over the edge. He ripped off his shirt, showing a body covered in knife scars, grabbed a machete, and charged at me. He was a level 5 body forging fighter, not completely useless. But when he swung at my face, I slashed his hand clean off with the trident blade. He screamed and clutched the bleeding stump. I dropped the weapon and told him he was right about one thing. The world really is bigger than he imagined. I slapped him so hard he spun in circles, then walked past him toward Euro. He screamed at the red-haired thug to go downstairs and get Baldy Lee. The trashy woman who'd been slapping Euro backed away the second she saw me coming. Euro threw herself into my arms, crying and shaking. The drug was still affecting her. Her face was burning red and her body was hot. I channeled chi into her and neutralized the drug quickly. She clung to me, sobbing with relief. I noticed the red handprint on her cheek and felt the rage surge again. I looked at the woman who'd hit her. She collapsed to the ground begging for mercy. I told her to slap herself until I was satisfied. She didn't hesitate. She started hitting her own face over and over until both cheeks were swollen and purple. Downstairs, the red-haired thug found Baldy Lee drinking with his boys. He told him someone was causing trouble upstairs and had cut off Wang Jun's hand. Baldy Lee was already in a foul mood from what I'd put him through earlier that day, so he exploded with anger and headed upstairs with his crew. One of his men, Zhang Matzi, the same guy who'd thought he recognized my back earlier, charged in first, ready to teach whoever it was a lesson. The moment he saw my face, he froze. He rubbed his eyes, looked again, and nearly choked. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked right back out. Wang Jun chased after him, crying about his severed hand, but Zhang Matzi kicked him across the hallway and cursed him for being stupid enough to mess with someone like me. Another guy who'd peeked inside did the exact same thing. Came back out white-faced and suddenly remembered he needed to go home to bring his mother dinner. The red-haired thug was completely confused, insisting the troublemaker was right inside that room. Wang Jun stumbled out and started begging Baldy Lee for justice. Before Baldy Lee could respond, Zhang Matzi kicked Wang Jun again and screamed at him for being blind and picking fights with the wrong people. Baldy Lee demanded to know what was going on. Zhang Matzi's face crumbled and he stammered out the truth. The person inside that room was the same monster from earlier today. Baldy Lee walked into the room and saw me sitting on the couch like I owned the place, surrounded by his beaten men and a floor covered in blood. His eye twitched. He stammered out a greeting, calling me Big Brother, and saying what a coincidence it was running into me again. I told him it wasn't a pleasant coincidence. Everywhere I went, I kept finding his White Wolf Society people acting like animals. He immediately threw Wang Jun under the bus, swearing he had no idea what was happening tonight, and that it was all Wang Jun's doing. He asked me what I wanted done. I told him simply, I didn't want to see Wang Jun ever again. He nodded without hesitation and said after tonight, Wang Jun would cease to exist. Wang Jun heard everything from the doorway and dropped to his knees begging for his life, but Baldy Lee cut him off and had Zhang Matzi drag him away. I told Baldy Lee the rest of the beaten thugs could go. I'd already punished them enough. He barked at them to get up and thank me. They did, bowing and limping out as fast as their broken bodies could carry them. The trashy woman who'd been slapping Euro had beaten her own face into a swollen mess by then. I told her to leave and think about her life choices. She stumbled out without looking back. Baldy Lee asked nervously if we were even. I told him we were, for now, but warned him that if anything like this happened again, I'd rip the White Wolf Society out by the roots. He promised repeatedly that there wouldn't be a next time. I took Euro's hand and walked out. I could feel Baldy Lee's relief behind me. The man was soaked in sweat like he'd narrowly escaped death. After we left, his men came back in. One of them grumbled about how unfair it was and wanted revenge. Zhang Matzi shut him down immediately, asking if he actually wanted to go pick a fight with me. Baldy Lee sighed and explained to them all that I was at least a meridian opening master, impossibly young for that level, and that someone with that kind of future was not someone the White Wolf Society could afford to make an enemy of. They all went quiet after that. Outside the nightclub, I was about to hail a taxi for Euro when a red sports car came roaring down the street and screeched to a halt right in front of us. The scissor doors popped open and out stepped Yi Fei, Yi Tianxin's second son, my so-called younger brother from the Yi family. A crowd of bystanders pulled out their phones to take pictures of the flashy car, and some girls were already swooning. He spotted me immediately and put on a condescending grin. Then he noticed Euro standing next to me, and his eyes flickered with surprise. She was actually the girl they'd been planning to kidnap to use as leverage against me, and here she was right in front of him. He started lecturing me like he had any right to. He said I shouldn't forget my surname just because I'm married into the Zhang family. He accused me of sneaking around with another woman right after getting married and warned me not to bring shame on the Yi family name. Then he ordered me to go back to the Zhang mansion like a good little dog. Let him take care of Euro for me and arrange a meeting between Yi Tianxin and Junyao. I told him coldly to go back and tell Yi Tianxin that I had nothing to do with the Yi family anymore. He raised his voice, calling me an ungrateful bastard who thought he was tough just because he had the Jiang family behind him. He mocked me, saying I was just a live-in son-in-law and the Jiang family would never actually care about me. He threatened that the Yi family had ways of dealing with people and I'd better cooperate. I cut him off and told him if the Yi family tried anything, my methods would be beyond what their pathetic family could handle. Then I took Euro and left. I didn't see his face after I turned away, but I knew the look, that simmering, petty rage of someone used to getting his way. What I found out later was worse. He stared at Euro's back as we walked away, his eyes full of sick desire. He muttered to himself that once he got his hands on her, he'd love to see the look on my face. He walked straight into the nightclub and asked to see Wang Jun. The red-haired thug at the door tried to stall him, saying Wang Jun wasn't available. But Yi Fei heard voices from inside the office and pushed his way in. He found Baldy Lee and his crew sitting there. They'd relocated from the wrecked VIP room. Yi Fei didn't recognize Baldy Lee, but was told he was Wang Jun's superior, a high-ranking member of the White Wolf Society. His attitude changed instantly to flattery. He told them he had a business proposition, 500 million yuan to kidnap a girl. Just a harmless college student with no connections, he said. He pulled up a photo on his phone. It was Euro. Baldy Lee and his men stared at the picture in dead silence. Then they looked at each other, and I'm told their eyes were burning with barely contained fury. They'd just spent the entire evening groveling before me, nearly getting themselves killed because Wang Jun had messed with the same girl. And now this idiot was walking and asking them to kidnap her again. Yi Fei smiled at them, completely oblivious to the storm brewing behind their eyes, and asked cheerfully, "So what do you think, brothers? Pretty good deal, right?" Back at the nightclub, Baldy Lee's crew beat Yi Fei senseless the moment he showed them Euro's photo. Zhang Matzi jumped him first, screaming about what a terrible deal it was. The irony was perfect. My so-called brother walked right into the den of people who'd just spent the evening terrified of me and asked them to kidnap the very girl I'd come to rescue. They didn't even let him finish his pitch. Meanwhile, I took Euro to a shopping mall since her clothes were torn to shreds. I couldn't send her home looking like that. Her mother would think the worst. We walked into a women's clothing store, and the salesgirl picked out a gorgeous purple dress that suited Euro perfectly. When Euro saw the 30,000 yuan price tag, she panicked and tried to suggest we go somewhere cheaper. I told her money wasn't a problem and to just try it on. Before she could, the store manager appeared, a woman named Wang Yingying who apparently knew Euro from school. She immediately started mocking Euro, saying a girl whose family ran a noodle shop had no business touching expensive clothes. She turned on the salesgirl too, scolding her for letting just anyone try things on. Euro went red with humiliation. I told Wang Yingying to apologize. She laughed in my face and called me a broke loser. So I slapped her. She shrieked and called some guy named Brother Tian on the phone, crying about being attacked in her store. I ignored her completely. I had the salesgirl bring out several more outfits for Euro to try. Every single one looked stunning on her. The purple dress especially made her look like a fairy who'd wandered down from heaven. She kept asking if they looked good, and I told her honestly she was beautiful in all of them. Her eyes sparkled with happiness each time. I told the salesgirl to wrap everything up. Euro protested that one piece was enough, but I waved it off. A few 100,000 yuan was nothing. That caught the attention of a tall young man who'd just stormed in with a squad of security guards. His name was Zhao Xiaolong, and Wang Yingying ran to him immediately, showing off her swollen cheek. He recognized me right away as the Jiang family's live-in son-in-law. Apparently, my photo had been circulating among the rich kids of Jiangdu. Wang Yingying hesitated when she heard I was connected to the Jiang family, but Zhao Xiaotian reassured her. His father was the general manager of this mall, which was backed by the Jiangnan Chamber of Commerce, a massive organization. He said the Jiang family would never go to war over a worthless son-in-law like me. Then he noticed Euro coming out of the fitting room, and his eyes lit up with desire. He told me to kneel, apologize, and hand Euro over to him. In exchange, he might consider letting me walk away. Wang Yingying even helped persuade Euro, saying it was an honor to be noticed by someone like him. Turns out she'd hated Euro since high school, when her rich boyfriend dumped her the moment he laid eyes on Euro. She was using this whole situation to get revenge. Euro was shaking with anger. I patted her shoulder and told her not to waste energy on two idiots. Zhao Xiaotian exploded and ordered his security guards to take me down. I knocked out all the security guards in seconds. Zhao Xiaotian was furious, but switched to threats instead of fists. He said causing trouble at the Jiangnan Mall meant going against the Jiangnan Chamber of Commerce, and one phone call from him could have me locked up for years. Euro panicked at that, knowing the Chamber of Commerce was a massive force in the province and his father really was the mall's general manager. I told her not to worry and pulled out the gold card Jingxian had given me earlier that day. I tossed it to Zhao Xiaotian. The moment he saw it, the color drained from his face. It was a Jiangnan Dragon card, the highest tier membership in the entire Chamber of Commerce. Only about a dozen existed in the world, and every single holder was someone with terrifying power and connections. His own father had specifically warned him never to offend anyone carrying one. He stammered, asking how I could possibly have it. I asked him simply, now that he'd seen it, did he still think he could push me around? He went silent. Wang Yingying asked what the big deal was, and when he explained, her jaw dropped. She couldn't understand how someone she'd written off as a broke loser could be holding something that even the Jiang family patriarch couldn't get. She suggested maybe I'd stolen it or found it somewhere. That idea gave Zhao Xiaotian hope. He snapped a photo and sent it to his father, asking him to look up who the card belonged to. His father, Zhao Daji, was upstairs in his office. He checked the Chamber of Commerce's internal system and found the card was registered to Li Jingxian, the city leader's wife. He also knew she came from the Li family of Jinling, one of the most powerful families in the entire province, with influence across the military, government, and business. The Jiangnan Chamber of Commerce itself had been co-founded by members of that family. Zhao Daji immediately assumed I must have stolen the card. In his mind, there was no possible way a live-in son-in-law from the Jiang family could know someone at that level. He called his son and told him to keep me there while he rushed down. Back in the store, Zhao Xiaotian's confidence came flooding back. He confronted me like an interrogator, demanding I confess where I got the card. I told him the truth, someone gave it to me. He laughed and said the card belonged to the city leader's wife, and there was no way a worthless son-in-law like me could possibly know her, let alone receive such a precious gift. Wang Yingying piled on, sneering at Euro that her boyfriend was a thief who'd stolen from one of the most powerful women in the city. Euro fired back immediately, insisting I would never steal anything. Zhao Daji showed up within minutes, a middle-aged man with the confidence of someone used to bossing people around. He took one look at my plain clothes and decided I was guilty on the spot. He demanded I confess to stealing the dragon card. I told him the same thing I told his son. It was a gift. He laughed and said the city leader's wife would never give such a treasure to a worthless live-in son-in-law. He offered to go easy on me if I came clean, for the Jiang family's sake. I told him he had it backwards. I wasn't the one who needed mercy. I had no plans to let any of them off. Father and son both thought that was hilarious. Zhao Daji called his boss at the Chamber of Commerce to escalate the situation, planning to bury me so deep even the Jiang family couldn't dig me out. I sat down with Euro and waited. I wanted to see exactly how far these clowns would go. What I didn't know was that Zhao Daji's call went up the chain to a woman named Zhuge Jia. a director of the Jiangnan Chamber of Commerce and a member of the powerful Zhuge family from Jinling. She happened to be sitting right next to Jingxian at the Huang family estate, chatting over tea. She'd come to Jiangdu because she'd heard about Shiyue's billion-yuan development project and wanted a piece of the action. When her secretary relayed what was happening at the mall, Jingxian immediately realized they were talking about me. Her face darkened. She told Zhuge Jia that the card holder was her friend and that it was unacceptable for a mere mall manager to be harassing him. Zhuge Jia could tell from Jingshuan's tone that I mattered to her, so she promised to handle it personally. Both women got up and headed to the mall together. Back in the store, Zhao Daji got a call from Zhuge Jia's secretary saying she was coming in person. He was thrilled. He assumed the big bosses were coming to deal with me and that he'd earn a commendation for catching a thief. He told me smugly that the boss's secretary was on her way and I should start preparing for prison. About half an hour later, 3 women walked into the store. Zhao Daji rushed forward to greet them, and when he saw who it was, Jingxian herself, plus Zhuge Jia, his jaw nearly hit the floor. These weren't just important people. These were women whose families could crush his entire career with a phone call. He started groveling, but all 3 of them walked right past him without a glance. They came straight to me. Jingxian apologized for arriving late and for the trouble I'd been put through. The look on Zhao Daji's face was priceless. The woman whose card he accused me of stealing was standing right here, calling me a friend and bowing her head to me. Wang Yingying and Zhao Xiaotian turned white as paper, finally understanding the scale of their mistake. I smiled and told Jingxian it wasn't her fault. The blame belonged to the people running the mall, who clearly hired garbage without checking their character. Zhuge Jia's expression tightened at that, since the mall was under her organization, but she held her tongue out of respect for Jingxian. Jingxian asked what happened, so I laid out the whole story calmly. When I finished, Zhao Daji was drenched in sweat. He kicked his own son to the ground and started beating him, screaming about what a disaster he'd caused. He didn't stop until the kid's face was swollen and purple. Then he bowed deeply to me and begged forgiveness. Zhuge Jia cut in coldly and told him to report to Human Resources tomorrow. He was fired. He nearly collapsed, pleading about his years of loyal service. She told him she wouldn't repeat herself. The invisible pressure she released made him shut his mouth instantly. He stumbled out of the store in a daze, so shattered he didn't even remember to take his son with him. Zhao Xiaotian scrambled to his feet and tried to sneak away. I stopped him with one word. He turned around shaking, his bruised face full of fear. I smiled at him and asked, "So, how does it feel to be the one getting humiliated?" Zhao Xiaotian stood there with his head down, not daring to say a word. I could see the rage boiling inside him, but he knew better than to open his mouth. I waved him off and told him to remember today's lesson. Those who humiliate others will be humiliated themselves. He turned and ran. Wang Yingying chased after him, but he kicked her away, screaming that this was all her fault. Zhuge Jia fired her on the spot. Jingxian asked if I was satisfied with how things were handled. I nodded and thanked her. I had the salesgirl Zhang Xiaoli pack up all the clothes Euro had tried on and paid with the dragon card. Before we left, Zhuge Jia surprised Zhang Xiaoli by promoting her to store manager, a reward for treating us well when her own boss had been terrible. The girl could barely contain her excitement. Outside, Jingxian offered us a ride. We climbed into a black Rolls-Royce and headed toward Euro's neighborhood. The car was quiet. I closed my eyes to rest. Euro was too intimidated by the company to speak. Jingxian wanted to chat, but didn't want to disturb me. Eventually, Zhuge Jia couldn't resist. She turned around and asked if my medical skills were really as impressive as Jingxian claimed. I could see the doubt all over her face. She clearly didn't believe someone my age could do what Jingxian described. I opened my eyes and smiled, saying my skills were nothing special. Then I casually mentioned that I could see she was suffering from irregular periods, internal heat imbalance, and hormonal disruption. The car went dead silent. Zhuge Jia's face flushed red, and she snapped that I was talking nonsense before whipping her head back around. But every woman in that car could tell from her reaction that I'd nailed every symptom. Euro stared at me with her mouth slightly open, looking at me like I was some kind of mystery she couldn't figure out. A guy who could fight, who knew powerful people, and who could diagnose someone's health problems at a glance. We dropped Euro off at her rundown apartment complex. She thanked me again, her eyes soft and warm. I told her we were old classmates, and she didn't need to keep thanking me. She went upstairs reluctantly, looking back several times. I watched until she disappeared, then took a taxi to the Jiang mansion. Later I found out what happened when she got home. Her mother saw the bags of expensive clothes and immediately got suspicious. When Euro explained the whole evening, instead of being grateful, her mother accused me of staging the kidnapping myself just to win Euro's affection. She told Euro to stay away from me since I was already married. Euro was furious and stormed off to her room. I couldn't blame her mother for being protective, but the accusation stung a little when I heard about it later. I got back to the Jiang villa after half an hour. My father-in-law was waiting at the door to scream at me for coming home late, saying I'd just gotten married and was already staying out at night. My mother-in-law shut him up and turned to me with a big smile. She said I'd done something incredible. The White Wolf Security Company had not only paid the full debt they'd owed for years, but added extra interest on top. She said the company had sent dozens of people to collect before and none had succeeded, but I handled it on my first try. I played humble and said I just got lucky. My father-in-law muttered that a blind cat had stumbled onto a dead mouse, but nobody was listening to him. Just then, Junyao came through the front door looking exhausted. She'd been working on the company situation. Both parents rushed to her. My father-in-law suddenly all warmth and concern, a complete contrast to how he treated me. They asked about the business. Junyao's face was grim. She said the first branch had almost total control of the Jiang group now. The partnership with the Huangfu family had been stolen, and getting it back would be extremely difficult. She'd spent days trying to reconnect with the Huangfu family, but couldn't get anywhere. Without the Jiang group's resources behind her, she had no leverage. And she couldn't access those resources without becoming CEO first, which the first branch was blocking. My mother-in-law suggested giving up the fight entirely. She said they could sell their shares in the Jiang group and focus on her own company, Yunming Pharmaceuticals, which was worth a few billion. With Junyao's talent, they could build something great on their own. Junyao shook her head firmly. Her voice was steel. She said she was going to take back everything that belonged to her. I listened quietly from the side. What Junyao didn't know was that I'd already become sworn siblings with Huangfu Shuriwe, the very person she was desperately trying to reach. The connection she needed was sleeping under the same roof as her. Back at the villa, my father-in-law complained that I was useless and asked why I wasn't helping Junyao with her problems. I told him not to worry. The Huangfu family would come looking for Junyao on their own soon enough. He thought I was full of hot air, but my mother-in-law actually believed me. She defended me, reminding him I'd just collected a debt nobody else could handle. Upstairs, Junyao was on the rooftop making a phone call. I didn't hear the conversation, but later I pieced together that she'd called someone she referred to as senior sister. Apparently, they shared a master. She asked this woman for help reconnecting with the Huangfu family. The woman agreed, but warned that their plan couldn't afford any more mistakes, that they needed to find that place as soon as possible. Before hanging up, the woman mentioned that their master had found an antidote for the Baigan flower poison and would send it soon. So Junyao already knew she'd been poisoned, and she had her own mysterious connections working on it. My wife was far more complicated than she let on. When she came back to the room, I was already lying on the floor. We had an agreement, same room, separate beds. I called her, wife, and told her to get some rest. She glared at me and told me never to call her that, then went to shower. I watched her walk away and smiled to myself. Stubborn and proud, but I'd win her over eventually. Meanwhile, at a hospital across town, the Yi family was gathered around a bed. Yi Fei was wrapped head to toe in bandages. Baldy Li's crew had beaten him half to death at the nightclub. When he told them the White Wolf Society did it, the anger drained from their faces instantly. In Jiangdu, there's a power ranking everyone knows. 1 gate, 2 societies, 3 clans, 4 families. The Dragon family sits alone at the top, the true rulers of Jiangdu, with a patriarch who was once a military heavyweight. Below them are the 2 underground organizations, the White Wolf Society and the Black Tiger Society. Then come the 3 ancient clans, Jiang, Wang, and Li. At the very bottom are the 4 families, Yun, Qin, Wu, and Yi. The Yi family is dead last. They couldn't afford to pick a fight with the White Wolf Society, which had martial arts masters at every level of leadership, including Meridian opening masters at the very top. Yi Fei explained that the beating was about Euro. The thugs called her their sister-in-law and warned him never to touch her again. The Yi family was confused about how a girl with no background ended up connected to the White Wolf Society, but they were relieved it wouldn't escalate further. Still, their plan to use Euro against me was dead. Yi Tianqian decided on a new approach. They'd use force to make me submit. He mentioned the family's own martial arts retainers. The next morning, I called Sister Shuriwei and asked her for a favor. I told her about Zhu and Yao's situation, how she needed to reconnect with the Huangfu family for a business partnership but couldn't get through. There was a pause on the other end. I offered to repay her however she wanted. She scolded me for being too formal, saying it was a small thing between siblings. Then she added something that caught my attention. She said Zhu and Yao's husband was lucky to have me, and there was a strange note of longing in her voice. I wondered if I was reading too much into it. After she hung up, Shuriwei apparently said something interesting to herself. She noted that Zhu Yao wasn't simple at all. Not only did she have me working on her behalf, but she'd also managed to get the dragon family involved somehow. That last part surprised me when I learned about it later. The dragon family, the most powerful force in all of Jiangdu, was connected to my wife? There was clearly a lot about Zhu Yao I still didn't know. I spent the next 2 days going around collecting all the overdue payments on the Jiang company's list. Some of the debtors tried to play tough, but I dealt with every single one. Finally, I was down to the last name, a medical clinic. The place was nicely decorated, a mix of Chinese and Western medicine, with a faint herbal scent hanging in the air. But something was off. There wasn't a single patient inside. A clinic this size and this well-maintained should have been packed. A young nurse came out and asked if I was here to see a doctor. I told her I was looking for the owner. A guy in a white coat stepped out from the back room, and the moment we locked eyes, we both felt that spark of recognition. It took me a second, but then it clicked. Zhang Miaochuan, my best friend from middle school. He recognized me at the same time and rushed over, pulling me into a bear hug. We hadn't seen each other in 3 years. He'd grown up, and so had I. He asked where I'd disappeared to back then. I gave him a vague answer about leaving Jiangdu for a while. I didn't want to burden him with the truth about prison. We sat down and caught up for a long time, talking about old days and what we'd been up to. Eventually, he asked what brought me to his clinic. I hesitated. I'd come to collect a debt he owed to Yunming Pharmaceuticals, my mother-in-law's company. When I told him, his face fell. I immediately said I hadn't known it was his clinic, and if he couldn't pay right now, I'd give him more time. He smiled bitterly and told me the whole story. Not long ago, a patient had taken medicine he prescribed and supposedly had a bad reaction. To pay the compensation, Miaochuan had to borrow from loan sharks. He planned to use his clinic's income to pay them back, but after the incident, his reputation was destroyed and patients stopped coming. The clinic was barely surviving. Before I could respond, a group of thugs burst through the door. The leader was a flashy guy in a flower print shirt with dragon tattoos on his arms and a gold chain around his neck. He demanded Miaochuan hand over the clinic to settle his debt, saying there was no way he could scrape together 1,000,000 yuan in 3 days. Miaochuan refused. His father had left him this clinic and he'd rather die than give it up. The flower shirt guy ordered 2 of his men to teach him a lesson. They closed in with their fists raised. Miaochuan was frozen with fear, his legs refusing to move. I stepped in and caught both punches mid-swing, then threw the 2 men across the room like they were made of straw. Everyone in the clinic froze. Miaochuan stared at me with his mouth open. The quiet kid he'd known 3 years ago had just tossed 2 grown men like rag dolls. The flower shirt guy screamed for all his men to rush me at once. Miaochuan tried to help, but he didn't need to. I knocked them all down in under a minute, slapping each one away with open palms. Not a single one got back up. I called the leader over. He was terrified but still tried to name-drop his boss, someone called Brother Bao. I hit him with a burst of spiritual pressure that dropped him to his knees, then told him to start talking. I'd already sensed something was wrong about the whole situation. The truth came spilling out. The patient who'd had the bad reaction was a plant. They'd staged the whole thing deliberately to force Miaochuan into debt so they could seize his clinic. The reason was simple. This street was about to be demolished for redevelopment, and the property would be worth a fortune. Miaochuan exploded with rage. He'd spent months doubting his own medical skills because of that incident, and now he found out it was all a setup. He charged at the flower shirt guy and started punching and kicking him. I let him get it out of his system for a while, then pulled him back. I told the beaten thug to call Brother Bao and get him here. He didn't dare refuse. Miaochuan was worried. Apparently this Brother Bao had some real connections, possibly tied to the Yun family, one of Jiangdu's four major families. He suggested calling the city guards. I shook my head and smiled. If the authorities showed up, it wouldn't be nearly as fun. Brother Bao showed up at the clinic with a crew of thugs. His real name was Wang Tianbao, a rough-looking, dark-skinned man with a face full of menace. The flower shirt guy ran to him crying about how we'd beaten them up. Wang Tianbao called his own men useless, then turned his cold eyes on me and Miaochuan. He demanded the clinic and compensation, 10,000 yuan per injured thug, plus I had to kneel and apologize to each one personally. I patted Miaochuan's shoulder and told him to let me handle this. He could barely get out a thank you. I slapped Wang Tianbao so hard he spun in circles. His men rushed me, and I dropped all of them in seconds. When he recovered, he started name-dropping, said he was backed by the Yun family's third master, one of Jiangdu's four great families. He said crushing me would be like crushing an ant. I raised my hand again, and he immediately switched from threatening to begging, calling me little brother, and asking me to talk things out peacefully. Then I did something that confused everyone, including Miaochuan. I asked how much my brother owed. Wang Tianbao said 50,000 principal, 100,000 with interest. I told him my brother was a man of his word and should absolutely pay the full amount with interest. Miaochuan looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Then I told Wang Tianbao that since he was in the lending business, I wanted to borrow some money myself. He asked how much. I said 20 million. His face twitched, but he was too scared to refuse. I signed his contract. He wired the money to my account, and then I immediately transferred 1 million back to him to settle Miaochuan's debt. I tore up Miaochuan's loan contract right in front of everyone. Wang Tianbao stood there blinking, slowly realizing what had just happened. I'd borrowed his money to pay off his own loan. I warned him to never bother Miaochuan again, then added one last thing as he was leaving. I told him my name was Yi Chu from the Yi family, and if he wanted to collect on the 20 million, he should go ask them for it. Or he could take me to court, but since it was an illegal high-interest loan, good luck with that. He nearly fell over. He understood perfectly I hadn't borrowed anything. I'd robbed him in broad daylight using his own paperwork, and there wasn't a thing he could do about it. The Yi family was too powerful for a small-time crook like him to confront, and the courts wouldn't touch an illegal lending contract. It was beautiful. Miaochuan was stunned. After the thugs left, he thanked me over and over with tears in his eyes. I transferred him 100,000 yuan from my own pocket and told him to use it to get back on his feet. He nearly started crying, so I told him to stop being dramatic and took him out for lunch at a roadside restaurant. We ate and talked until mid-afternoon, catching up on 3 years of lost time. When I got back to the Zheng villa, I found my in-laws entertaining a stranger in the living room. He was a young man dressed like money, expensive suit, Rolex watch, polished designer shoes. The moment he looked at me, I caught the flash of contempt in his eyes as he took in my plain clothes. I didn't like him already. My mother-in-law introduced him as Qian Xian, one of Junyao old classmates. He stood up with a smooth smile and said whoever Junyao chose to marry must be exceptional. Then he asked where I worked, the kind of question that sounds polite but is really designed to measure how far above you someone thinks they are. I could see right through Qian Xian the moment he opened his mouth. He asked where I worked, already knowing the answer would make me look bad. I told him I didn't have a job. He put on this fake shocked expression and started lecturing me about how a man should have responsibility and not let his wife support him. I told him to mind his own business. My father-in-law jumped on me for being rude, but my mother-in-law stayed quiet. She could see what Qian Xian was doing too. When Junyao came home, Qian Xian's eyes lit up like a kid seeing candy. He practically tripped over himself running to greet her. He said he'd just returned from studying abroad and rushed to see her the moment he heard she was awake. He'd already booked a dinner at Jianghuai Pavilion and wanted to catch up. Junyao started to refuse, but my father-in-law cut in, praising Qian Xian's thoughtfulness. Then Qian Xian played his trump card. He mentioned he might be able to help with the Huangfu family partnership. That got my father-in-law excited, and Junyao couldn't say no after that. My father-in-law tried to leave me behind, but my mother-in-law insisted I come along. Qian Xian actually agreed. I caught a flash of scheming in his eyes. He wanted me there so he could show off in front of Junyao by making me look small. I went upstairs to change and came back down wearing a casual t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. My father-in-law nearly had a stroke. He screamed about how I was embarrassing the Jiang family. I told him it was a hot evening and we weren't going to a wedding. So what was the point of dressing up? My mother-in-law backed me up. When Junyao came down in a stunning red dress with her wavy hair flowing, Qian Xin could barely keep his jaw off the floor. I noticed the hungry look in his eyes and felt nothing but contempt. A clown like him wasn't even worth worrying about. We drove to the main branch of Jianghuai Pavilion in Qian Xin's stretched Lincoln. This location was much bigger and fancier than the South Side branch where I'd eaten with Sister Shuriwa. Qian Xin had reserved a prince-tier private room on the top floor, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the entire city, the sunset painting everything gold and red. My father-in-law was visibly impressed. He'd only eaten here a handful of times in his life. Even my mother-in-law smiled. Junyao sat down calmly and gazed out the window without much reaction. Qian Xin played the generous host, offering me the window seat with a smirk, saying I should enjoy the view since I'd probably never been here before and might never come again. I waved him off and said there was nothing special to look at, just buildings. Then I added that this place was nothing impressive and I could come anytime I wanted. My father-in-law erupted, saying the room alone cost 100,000 yuan to reserve and a meal here started at 1 million. He said only people of real status came here, and someone without even a proper job had no right to brag. My mother-in-law frowned, also thinking I was exaggerating. Junyao glanced at me with annoyance. She could tolerate a husband who was useless, but a useless husband who liked to boast was the worst kind. I shrugged and said I was telling the truth. I'd already eaten in the Emperor room, the tier above this one, just yesterday with Sister Shuriwa, and it wasn't that big a deal. Nobody believed me about the Emperor room. My father-in-law looked at me like I was the most embarrassing thing he'd ever seen. Junyao said something that cut deep. That people who haven't been somewhere shouldn't pretend they have, because forcing comparisons only makes you a joke. Even my mother-in-law seemed disappointed in me for the first time. I gave up trying to explain. Nobody in this family trusted a word I said. Qian Xin smoothly changed the subject and started ordering. He got 2 bottles of Romanikani for Junyao, a bottle of Feitian Mitai for my father-in-law, and made a big show of telling me to order whatever I wanted, said opportunities like this don't come often, so I shouldn't hold back. The way he said it dripped with condescension, like he was throwing scraps to a stray dog. So I decided to take him up on it. I asked the waitress what their most expensive liquors were. She listed off several premium brands. I played dumb, asking whether old wine could expire, making myself look clueless on purpose. Qian Xin was barely holding back laughter, and my in-laws' faces were getting darker by the second. Then I asked if they had 80-year-old Mitai. The waitress hesitated but said yes. The price was steep. I waved that off and told her my friend Qian Xin was a real rich kid and money was no issue. Before he could stop me, I ordered 2 bottles. 80-year Mitai, 10 million yuan per bottle, 20 million total. The color drained from Qian Xin's face. I could hear his teeth grinding from across the table. He'd been here before and knew exactly what those bottles cost. His family had money, but not spend 20 million on dinner, money. He'd only brought everyone to this fancy restaurant to impress Junyao in the first place. My father-in-law tried to rescue the situation by scolding me, saying 80-year Mitai wasn't something I deserved to drink. I put on my most filial expression and said I'd ordered it for him. After all, Qian Xin told me to order freely, and I'd only gotten 2 bottles, not one for everyone. Nobody could argue with that. Qian Xin had literally just said to order whatever I wanted. My mother-in-law and Junyao stayed quiet. My father-in-law opened his mouth, but couldn't figure out how to say he wasn't worthy of drinking it either. I looked at Qian Xin's tortured expression and smiled innocently. You can afford it, right? If not, just say the word and I'll have them take it back. He was trapped. Admitting he couldn't pay meant total humiliation in front of Junyao. But swallowing 20 million for 2 bottles of liquor was financial suicide. I watched him wrestle with it, his face cycling through rage, desperation, and finally a forced calm as some new scheme flickered behind his eyes. He smiled through clenched teeth and said 2 bottles of wine was nothing. Of course he could handle it. I poured the 80-year Mitai for everyone. A full glass for my father-in-law, A full glass for my mother-in-law despite her saying she wanted just a little, and a full glass for Junyao without even asking. That killed the first bottle. I opened the second one, poured myself a big bowlful, and handed what was left, barely a splash, to Qian Xian. The look on his face was priceless. 20 million yuan worth of liquor, and I'd left him about one sip. My father-in-law took his first taste and was almost moved to tears. He said drinking 80-year Matai was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. He and Qian Xian started clinking glasses and chatting like best friends, completely ignoring me, which was exactly what I expected. Eventually, my father-in-law brought up the Huangfu partnership. Qian Xian puffed out his chest and said his father had recently been promoted to a director position at the Jiangnan Chamber of Commerce overseeing Jiangdu affairs. Since the chamber worked closely with the Huangfu family, he claimed his father could arrange a deal between them and Junyao. It was mostly hot air. A low-level director couldn't influence the Huangfu family's decisions, but my father-in-law ate it up. He practically begged Qian Xian to help and even sighed openly, saying what a wonderful son-in-law Qian Xian would have made. My mother-in-law glared daggers at him. Qian Xian played along perfectly, pretending to be heartbroken that he hadn't come back from abroad sooner, implying Junyao would have chosen him instead of me. He even threw me a challenging look. I ignored him completely. The guy was a clown trying to steal my wife, not worth a second of my attention. Junyao sat through all of this with zero expression on her face. Nothing these people said seemed to touch her at all. Then Qian Xian made his real move. After drinking a bit more, he started swaying and wobbling, then collapsed face first onto the table. My father-in-law shook him and called his name over and over, but got no response. Qian Xian was playing dead, pretending to be passed out drunk so he wouldn't have to pay the bill. I spotted it immediately. Junyao noticed too, her brow creasing slightly. My mother-in-law figured it out a moment later and said bluntly that the kid was faking it. My father-in-law finally caught on, and his face went pale. With Qian Xian unconscious, someone had to cover a bill that included 20 million yuan in Matai alone. Junyao said calmly that they'd have to pay it themselves. My father-in-law turned on me with fury, blaming me for ordering such expensive wine and costing the family 20 million for nothing. I reminded him he'd seemed pretty happy drinking it a few minutes ago. That nearly made him explode, so I quickly said I had a way to fix the problem. He screamed that I was useless and all I could do was talk big. My mother-in-law looked at me with cautious hope and asked if I really had a solution. I grinned and said I'd learned a special sobering-up technique back in prison, and I'd be happy to help young Master Qian wake right up. My mother-in-law hesitated, worried that forcing Qian Xian to pay might offend him since he'd promised to help Junyao connect with the Huangfu family. I told her not to worry. I was just helping the poor guy sober up so he could get home safely. Qian Xian was smugly confident behind his act. He figured no matter what I did, I couldn't wake someone who wasn't actually drunk. He had no idea what he was dealing with. I placed my hand on his shoulder and sent threads of qi into his body. Tiny needles of pain stabbed through him from the inside. His body started trembling and his face twisted, but since he was face down on the table, nobody could see his expression. My mother-in-law asked doubtfully if my method was working. My father-in-law snorted and said I was wasting everyone's time again. Then Qian Xian screamed and shot upright like he'd been electrocuted. My father-in-law's face went dark. The slap came faster than he expected. Qian Xian glared at me with murder in his eyes and demanded to know what I'd done to him. I smiled innocently and said I'd just helped him sober up. The pain vanished the moment he sat up, which only confirmed his suspicion that I'd done something. But he couldn't prove it and couldn't say anything without revealing he'd been faking. I cheerfully reminded him that since he was awake now, he should go settle the bill. He sat there grinding his teeth for a long time. 2,000 million yuan. That's what those 2 bottles cost. And he'd barely gotten a sip. I pushed harder, asking with mock concern if maybe he couldn't afford it. I suggested we could split the check, but noted how embarrassing that would look. The great young Master Qian, inviting people to dinner and then going Dutch because he couldn't cover the bill. That did it. He spat through clenched teeth that 20 million was nothing to him. He maxed out nearly every credit card he owned to pay. Watching him swipe card after card was deeply satisfying. Outside the restaurant, he tried one last move, offering to have a driver take Junyao home, obviously wanting more time alone with her. I stepped between them and said there was no need, that I'd take care of my own wife. I flagged down a taxi before he could argue. My mother-in-law got in first, my father-in-law reluctantly followed, and Junyao thanked Qian Xn politely before climbing in. I gave him one last grin and thanked him for the wonderful dinner, saying the 80-year Matai was really something special. The look on his face as our taxi pulled away was worth every second of the evening. Back at the villa, my father-in-law erupted the moment we walked through the door. He screamed that I'd ruined everything, that Qian Xian's father was a director at the Jiangnan Chamber of Commerce, and now I'd made an enemy of them. He raised his hand to hit me. I dodged, which made him even angrier. My mother-in-law grabbed him and held him back. She pointed out that he'd been perfectly happy drinking the expensive Matai himself and had no right to complain now. He turned red, but couldn't deny it. Junyao cut through the chaos with one word. Enough, she told her father to go to bed. He'd had too much to drink. Then she added something that shut everyone up. The Huangfu partnership was her problem, and she'd handle it her own way. She walked upstairs without another word. My father-in-law glared at me one more time and followed her up. My mother-in-law stayed behind. She knew I'd done everything tonight on purpose. She wasn't stupid. She told me she understood why I did it, that Qian Xian clearly had bad intentions toward Junyao, and a husband protecting his wife wasn't wrong. But she warned me to be less reckless in the future. With the first branch already squeezing them, making new enemies wasn't smart. I thanked her for always standing by me. She waved it off, saying we were family. I went upstairs and found the bedroom door locked. I knocked for a while but got no answer. Junyao was clearly angry at me too. This was her way of punishing me for tonight. I stood in the hallway shaking my head. A guy openly chasing my wife right in front of me, and I was supposed to just smile and take it? Everyone in this house thought I was a pushover. But there's a difference between being patient and being spineless, and sooner or later, they'd all figure that out. After knocking on the bedroom door a few more times with no answer, I gave up. I wasn't about to go back downstairs and let my mother-in-law see me locked out by my own wife. I had some pride left. So I climbed out a nearby window and left the villa entirely. I found a quiet park and sat cross-legged to cultivate. I'd been so busy the past few days that I'd neglected my training. But the moment I started drawing in spiritual energy, the grudge dragon chi in my core woke up violently. A shadowy black dragon thrashed around inside me, feeding on the same energy I was absorbing. Every cultivation session was like this. The stronger I got, the stronger the grudge dragon chi became too, because it shared the same root as me. The only way to truly resolve it was to make the dragon accept me, and according to my master, if I succeeded, it would actually become a massive boost to my power. But for now, all it gave me was agony. I needed to move forward with Sister Heiress soon. As for Junyao and her true phoenix body, that was a longer game. That woman was too proud and cold to approach anytime soon. While I was deep in meditation, my instincts screamed danger. I threw myself sideways without thinking. A poisoned bamboo arrow buried itself in the tree right where my head had been a split second earlier. A creepy old man in black robes dropped from a tree about 30 meters away, cackling. He had withered hair, a face full of deep wrinkles, and rotten yellow teeth. He looked like something out of a nightmare. He told me I was going to pay for destroying his heart-devouring goo, the same parasite I'd pulled out of Jingxian. He'd been tracking the residual energy from his dead worm for days and had finally found me. He launched a volley of poisoned arrows. I dodged them easily and charged straight at him. He threw a cloud of green powder in my face, something he called 10,000 ant heart-eating poison, and fired more arrows through the cloud. He was laughing, confident I was dead. I burst through the powder untouched and slammed my fist into his chest. His organs shattered and he flew across the park, crashing into the ground and vomiting blood. Years of testing poisons alongside my master had made my body immune to most toxins in existence. His fancy powder was worthless against me. He couldn't believe it. He kept insisting the poison was impossible to cure except by something he called the holy sect. I demanded to know who sent him, and what this holy sect was. I even hit him with spiritual pressure to break his will, but he only wavered for a second before swallowing a black pill. Dark blood trickled from his mouth, and the life drained from his eyes. His last words were a warning. I'd interfered with the holy sect's plans, and they would come for me. I searched his body, but found nothing useful besides poison supplies. I burned the corpse with a flame from my fingertip until nothing remained but ash. This troubled me. I'd stumbled into something bigger than I realized. My master had once mentioned two powerful sects in the southern border regions, the Five Poisons sect and the Witchcraft Goose sect. This holy sect had to be one of them, but I couldn't tell which. And they clearly had plans involving Jingxian and possibly the Li family. I thought about it for a while, couldn't reach any conclusions, so I moved to a different spot and continued training. Meanwhile, in a villa far away in Jinling, a man who'd been meditating suddenly sensed something. He pulled out a glass vial containing a black goo worm, now dead. He realized his ninth elder had been killed and immediately made a phone call, ordering his people to investigate who did it. He also mentioned it was time to close the net on the Li family and obtain some mysterious item they were after. Whatever the holy sect wanted, they weren't finished with Jiangdu, and now I was on their list too. I got back to the villa at dawn after training all night. Junyao had already left for work. Over breakfast, my mother-in-law told me troubling news. Jiang Juanlong's CEO inauguration ceremony had been moved up. Instead of a month from now, it was happening in 3 days. The first branch was clearly afraid that Juanyao's return might disrupt their plans, so they accelerated the timeline. Both my in-laws were grim. Once Junlong became CEO, the first branch would have an iron grip on the Jiang group, and our side would be squeezed even harder. My father-in-law blamed me, of course, saying the one chance they had. Qian Xian's connection to the Jiangnan Chamber of Commerce. I'd personally destroyed last night. I wanted to tell them about Sister Shuriwei and how I'd already asked her to help Junyao connect with the Huangfu family, but I held back. They wouldn't believe me, and my father-in-law would just mock me again. I decided to let things play out on their own. After breakfast, I headed out to buy medicinal ingredients. Last night's encounter with that holy sect assassin worried me. I was immune to most poisons, but the people around me weren't. I needed to prepare some protective pills. I found a traditional medicine market in the East District and located the best shop, a place called Wanyao Studio housed in an old-fashioned 3-story building. I handed the shopkeeper a list of rare herbs and ordered 5 sets. The total came to over 10 million yuan. The old shopkeeper was shocked by my age and the size of the order, but once the payment went through, he couldn't stop smiling. As I stepped outside, I ran into Jingxian. She was with another woman, about 30, with striking purple hair and a warm, mature beauty about her. I recognized her immediately. Yun Bingwan, an illegitimate daughter of the Yun family and a well-known widow in Jiangdu. The reason I knew her so well was personal. 3 years ago, my older brother Yi Chen had been obsessed with her. When she rejected him, he tried to drug her. The plan failed, and the Yun family was furious. To calm things down, the Yi family gave up major concessions and pushed me out to take the criminal blame. So in a way, this woman was connected to why I'd spent 3 years in prison. I chatted briefly with Jingxian, who told me her health was improving thanks to my treatment. I noticed Yun Bingwan studying me with curious, amused eyes but didn't think much of it. Shortly after I left, my phone rang. It was the young nurse from Miaochuan's clinic, crying hysterically. She said Miaochuan was being beaten to death and begged me to come save him. They were at a place called Baiyao Pavilion in the South District Medicine Market, not far from where I already was. I rushed over and found Miaochuan curled up on the floor, bloody and broken, with several large men kicking him. The nurse had tried to stop them and been shoved to the ground. A middle-aged man in traditional Chinese clothes sat in a carved chair nearby, rolling antique walnuts in his hand like some kind of mob boss. He told Miaochuan to pay 20 million yuan or he wasn't leaving alive. The story was a classic scam. Miaochuan had come to buy herbs and was shown a supposedly century-old ginseng root worth 20 million. He'd examined it out of curiosity and recognized it was fake. Pieces of several different wild ginseng roots spliced together. Before he could say anything, someone, accidentally, bumped him and the ginseng fell and shattered. The shop immediately demanded full compensation and produced certificates and purchase receipts proving it was genuine. Miaochuan refused to pay for a fake, so they beat him. Miaochuan spat blood and told the man the ginseng was counterfeit. The man just smiled and said it didn't matter what was true. He said it was real, so it was real. That was the kind of place this was. The whole thing had been a setup from the start. I rushed into the shop and found Miaochuan beaten bloody on the floor. He told me the whole story, the fake ginseng, the planted collision, the rigged certificates. I'd already guessed who was behind it. The moment I saw the middle-aged man rolling walnuts in his chair like some dynasty-era lord, I knew. It was Yun Zhonghe, the third master of the Yun family. I called him out directly. He didn't even bother denying it. Turns out this whole setup was his revenge for the 20 million I'd taken from his lackey Wang Tianbao. He'd investigated me, found out I was just a live-in son-in-law, and figured he could use a fake ginseng scam to squeeze the money back through Miaochuan. He had certificates, receipts, everything prepared. Even if police showed up, he was confident they'd side with him. He told Miaochuan the story of calling a deer a horse. When you have enough power, you can make anyone believe anything. I told him the money was borrowed fair and square, and I had no reason to return it. He told me to hand it over, or my friend pays. I told him actually, he should be the one paying, for beating Miaochuan half to death. He laughed and called over his family's number 2 fighter, an old man named Feng Hansan, who practiced eagle claw technique. The old man warned me that once he attacked, there would be blood. I waved him forward. He came at me with his clawed hands, fingers cutting through the air with small sonic booms. Impressive technique. I'd spent 3 years locked up with my master, so I hadn't seen many outside martial arts styles. The eagle claw fascinated me, so instead of ending things quickly, I played with him and started copying his moves mid-fight. After watching his form a few times, I struck back using his own technique, but at a level he'd never achieved in decades of practice. My claw raked across his forearm, leaving 5 gashes down to the bone. He stumbled back in shock and asked how I knew eagle claw. I told him I'd just learned it from watching him. He couldn't accept that. Yun Zhonghe couldn't accept it either, his second strongest fighter, beaten by a kid using the man's own style. Miaochuan just stood there with his mouth hanging open, struggling to connect the quiet boy he'd known in middle school with whoever I was now. Yun Zhonghe still wouldn't back down. He ordered all his remaining bodyguards to attack alongside Feng Hansan. I kept using the eagle claw. It was good practice. I tore through every single one of them in under a minute, then turned on Feng Hansan again. This time I went for his chest. He twisted away at the last second, but caught 5 deep claw marks across his shoulder. His arm went limp, and he surrendered immediately. I looked at Yun Zhonghe, whose face had gone from arrogant to stunned to genuinely frightened over the course of about 2 minutes. I told him I didn't know whether the Yun family was tough or not, but I definitely was. Cloud Crane came back to his senses, looking pretty unhappy. He'd prepared so well, but still lost. He forced a smile and said I could go, admitting defeat. I shook my head. I told him we could leave, but first he needed to apologize to my brother and pay for his medical treatment. Zhang Miaojuan got nervous and tried to speak up, but I stopped him. Cloud Crane was shocked. He was already letting us off, and I was still pushing? He warned me not to push my luck, saying he'd hurt my friend, but I'd also scammed him out of 20 million and hurt his people. I calmly told him he was right about the facts, but I never said I was here to be reasonable. He got furious and threatened me with the power of the Cloud family. I shook my head and told him I'd actually gone easy on everyone. If not for the Cloud family's reputation, his men wouldn't have gotten off with just injuries. His advisor Feng Hansen stepped in and whispered that he should just agree for now. Cloud Crane took a deep breath, swallowed his anger, and coldly asked what I wanted. I smiled and told him, 1 million for my brother's medical bills, plus a labor fee for me. When he asked what labor fee, I grinned and said all that fighting was hard work. I told him I needed some medicinal herbs and handed him a list. His face went dark when he saw it. The herbs were extremely rare and expensive, over 2 million per set, and I wanted 5 sets. Over 10 million total. But he held himself back. He said some of those herbs weren't available here and would take time to get from elsewhere. I waved my hand and said that was fine, then went to treat Zhang Miaojuan's injuries. Miaojuan whispered that maybe we should just drop it. The Cloud family was too powerful to make enemies of. I smiled and told him not to worry. The Cloud family was nothing to me. He just stared, speechless. Before long, a huge group of security guards and bodyguards in black rushed in, all armed. Behind them were 2 women, Li Jingxian and Yun Bingwan. I narrowed my eyes and asked Cloud Crane if he was going back on his word. He snorted and said his family wasn't to be messed with, then hurried to the door to greet his sister Yun Bingwan. She said she'd heard someone was causing trouble and came to check. Li Jingxian was curious too. They'd been browsing the market, ran into the guards, and followed them here. Because I was surrounded, they hadn't noticed me at first. Cloud Crane pointed inside and called me a reckless kid. But when the crowd parted, both women saw me. Li Jingxian recognized me immediately. Dr. Yi, first surprised, then her face turned serious. I was stunned too. What a coincidence, running into her again. Cloud Crane's expression changed when he realized I knew the mayor's wife. Li Jingxian asked what happened, and I gave her the short version without hiding anything. She assured me she'd make sure justice was done, then looked at Yin Bingwan, who nodded and told Cloud Crane to apologize. He tried to protest, but she cut him off with one sharp word. Apologize. He seemed genuinely afraid of her. After struggling with himself, he gritted his teeth and said sorry. I was surprised. Yin Bingwan was just an illegitimate daughter, yet Cloud Crane feared her? I said since he apologized, I'd let the matter go. But the herbs and my brother's compensation still stood. Cloud Crane's eye twitched, but he held back his anger and agreed. He had the staff prepare the herbs and personally transferred 1 million to Zhang Miaojuan. Soon the staff brought 5 sets of herbs, and Cloud Crane handed them to me himself. I took them with a smile, thanked him, nodded to Li Jingxian, and said goodbye. She smiled and told me to take care. I left with a bewildered Miaojuan. After we were gone, Yin Bingwan sent Li Jingxian ahead to another shop, saying she'd catch up. Once Li Jingxian left, Cloud Crane burst out complaining about me. Instead of answering, Yin Bingwan asked about my fight with Old Feng. Cloud Crane told her everything. She was surprised and asked Feng Hansen for details. He described our fight carefully. She was astonished that I knew Eagle Claw technique and had supposedly learned it on the spot. Feng Hansen said solemnly that my Eagle Claw had already reached mastery, beyond even his level, and that I must have trained for years despite claiming to have learned it just then. Yin Bingwan grew even more intrigued by me. She told Cloud Crane that I'd saved Li Jingxuan's life before and warned him to drop the grudge and never bother me again. Then she left. I took Miaojuan and Zhou Xiaoyan back to the clinic. Miaojuan thanked me emotionally. Without me, he didn't know what would have happened. I laughed it off and told him it was nothing, just to call me next time instead of trying to tough things out alone. Knowing his stubborn personality, he probably would have let himself get beaten to death before asking for help. If Zhou Xiaoyan hadn't called me, things could have gone badly. He nodded. I asked Zhou Xiaoyan to take care of him. I could tell she had feelings for him, but the blockhead hadn't noticed at all. She promised she would. After chatting a bit more, I left the clinic. And was about to find a place to refine medicine when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Yi Chu. I just remembered there's more information about your background that I haven't told you. Come back to the Yi family if you want to know. I could already guess who sent it. Then the phone rang, same number. I picked up and heard Yi Tianqing's voice. Yi Chu. I'm waiting for you at the Yi estate. He hung up right away. My face darkened. The Yi family just wouldn't leave me alone. I knew it was probably a trap, but if there was even the smallest chance of learning something about my origins, I wouldn't pass it up. I headed straight there. Meanwhile, at the Yi family villa, Yi Tianqing had prepared a welcome for me. He'd brought in a middle-aged man named Su Wanshan, a body-forging stage 6 expert and the family's retainer, along with several bodyguards. They were all supremely confident that one young man wouldn't be any trouble. About half an hour later, I arrived. The butler led me inside. I scanned the room, paused briefly on Su Wanshan, then strolled over to the sofa and sat down. I looked straight at Yi Tianqing. Talk. What haven't you told me? Xie Yushan and Yi Chen exchanged confused glances. Yi Tianqing had said he could lure me back, and here I was. My question clearly hinted at some secret between us. Yi Tianqing glared at me. How dare you speak to an elder like that? Xie Yushan added sarcastically that since I was now a live-in son-in-law for the Jiang family, I must think I was above them. I glanced at Yi Tianqing with contempt. Elder? He doesn't deserve that title. His face went cold. He called me a rebellious son and asked if I thought marrying into the Jiang family made me untouchable. I was losing patience. Are you going to tell me or not? If not, I'm leaving. That was the last straw for him. He ordered the bodyguards to teach me a lesson about respecting elders. A big, burly one stepped forward with a nasty grin and told me to apologize to the family head if I didn't want to get hurt. I said coldly, he doesn't deserve it. The big guy cursed and charged at me, throwing a huge fist at my face. Yi Yiqin and Xiaolong were smirking, eager to see me beaten into submission. I didn't dodge. I simply caught his fist and flicked my wrist. He flew across the room like a rag doll and slammed into the far wall, punching a hole through it. He hit the ground, coughed up blood, and passed out. The room went dead silent. Everyone stared at me in disbelief. Yi Tianqing stammered, "You? How?" Xiaolong and Yi Yiqin's eyes went wide. No ordinary person could do that. There was only one explanation. I was a martial artist. I smirked. Surprised? Don't worry, that was just the warm-up. Yi Tianqing took a deep breath and tried to recover. He sneered that I'd become a martial artist, but said I was still too young and naive to think that was enough to stand against the Yi family. He declared that a mere martial artist was nothing before them. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Then show me what the Yi family's got. He turned respectfully to Su Wanshan and asked him to step in. Su Wanshan looked at me with arrogance and warned me to apologize now or face the consequences. When he fought, blood was guaranteed. I told him the last person who said that to me was begging for mercy after a few moves. I wondered how long he'd last. He went cold and stood up, heading outside. Too cramped in here. Let's go to the yard. I followed without hesitation. Everyone else trailed behind. In the courtyard, Su Wanshan put one hand behind his back and beckoned me with the other. I won't bully a youngster. You go first. I shook my head. You should go first. Once I start, you won't get a chance. His face darkened. If you want to die, I'll oblige. He dropped into a stance, body bent, swaying slightly, hands together and pointed down, looking exactly like a praying mantis. He lunged at me with incredible speed, hands striking at my vital points. I sidestepped and studied his moves. Mantis fist? Interesting. I smiled, then copied his stance and started swaying just like him, dodging every attack effortlessly. When the opening came, I struck his side with terrifying force. He went flying and crashed hard onto the grass. Yi Tianqing and the others were speechless. Su Wanshan staggered to his feet, face full of disbelief. How can you know Mantis Fist? I grinned. Just learned it from you. Impossible. His eyes shrank. He'd spent decades mastering that style, and I was already better than him. He refused to believe I'd picked it up on the spot. I shrugged. Believe it or not. So, want to keep going. His side was still throbbing with pain. He knew he was outmatched. I concede. Yi Tianqing and the others couldn't accept it. Their prized retainer, beaten by me. And when had I become this strong? They had no idea. I could see Yi Tianqing was even feeling some regret. If he'd known how powerful I was, he never would have married me off as a live-in son-in-law. He tried to say something to smooth things over, but I cut him off coldly. If you've got more tricks, bring them out. He went silent. He had nothing left. The family did have other experts, but he couldn't summon them without the old master's permission. I chuckled. Guess that's it then. The Yi family isn't all that impressive. His face twisted like he'd swallowed something rotten. Yi Yiqin spoke up defiantly, saying I shouldn't get cocky. The Yi family had other martial artists besides Su Wanshan who could deal with me easily. Then he paused and put on a fake, generous tone, saying that for the sake of family blood, they wouldn't attack me, but I should repay the family in return. Listening to his shameless words, I sneered inside. Oh, and how exactly do you want me to repay you? Yi Yiqin's eyes lit up, and he said it was simple. Just help arrange a meeting between their father and Miss Jiang. He promised there'd be benefits for me. I'd originally planned to just mock them, but I suddenly changed my mind. Don't just talk. Show me what these benefits are. Yi Yiqin looked uncomfortable. What do you want? I pretended to think, then said, just give me cash. The Yi family doesn't have anything else worth my time. He asked how much. I held up one finger. 100 million. Just a small gesture. His face froze. He said I was going too far. I raised an eyebrow and asked if the great Yi family couldn't even come up with that much. Yi Tianqing jumped in, saying business was bad lately, and offered 5 million. I sneered and asked if he was giving charity to a beggar. We went back and forth. He said 8 million. I said 80 million. He said 10 million. I said 40 million. He said 15 million. I said 30 million. Finally, veins popping on his forehead, he said 20 million was his absolute limit. Yi Yiqin chimed in about us being family and that I should be reasonable. I actually thought 20 million was fine, so I nodded and agreed, for family's sake. I gave them my account number right away. Yi Tianqing transferred the money immediately. Seeing the notification, I felt great. Another 20 million, nice. He told me to set up the meeting quickly. I agreed on the surface, but inside I was thinking, yeah, you can keep waiting forever. Then I remembered why I'd actually come. So, what else haven't you told me about my background? Yi Tianqing's expression flickered awkwardly. He shook his head and said he must have remembered wrong. There was nothing else. I knew it. I cursed him silently and walked straight out without another word. After I left, Xie Yushan worried aloud whether I'd just take the money and do nothing. Yi Tianqing said I wouldn't dare, then thought about my recent behavior and realized I probably would. He turned to Su Wanshan and asked about his senior martial brother. Su Wanshan confirmed he had one, Feng Hansan, who worked for the Cloud family. He was a body-forging stage 8 expert with masterful eagle claw technique, far stronger than Su Wanshan himself. Yi Tianqing was delighted and asked for an introduction in case I tried anything funny later. Su Wanshan promised to contact his brother right away. After leaving the Yi estate, I needed to find a quiet place to refine medicine, somewhere private where nobody would bother me. Going back to the Jiang house was out of the question. If Jiang Haiyun caught me, it'd be chaos. I thought about it, then called Huangfu Shiriwa. Her flirty, sweet voice came through the phone. Little brother, what made you think of calling your big sister? It made my heart itch. This woman really knew how to get to a guy. I told her I needed to borrow a room for medicine refining. She said her place was spacious and I could do whatever I wanted there. The way she said it made my heart itch even more. I really wanted to ask if she meant whatever literally. I hung up and took a cab to the address she sent. It was a villa neighborhood. Dongmei was waiting at the gate. I waved at her. She rolled her eyes and told me to follow. She led me into the complex, to a 2-story villa with gardens all around and luxurious decoration. Inside, Huangfu Shiriwa was sitting on the sofa sorting through documents. She was wearing a black spaghetti strap loungewear outfit, her white shoulders exposed, her long legs crossed and glowing in the sunlight. Without her usual sharp businesswoman edge, she looked soft and alluring. When she noticed me, her face lit up. You're here. She stood and walked over. A wave of fragrance hit me, along with a very distracting view. I casually looked away. For a young man full of energy, this was a bit much to handle. She noticed my reaction and I caught a teasing look in her eyes. She asked curiously what kind of medicine I was making. I explained I was refining detoxification pills and pills that could boost one's strength. Her eyes brightened at the mention of boosting strength. I hinted that it was especially useful for someone on the verge of a breakthrough. Her face lit up with excitement. Since using the medicinal bath recipe I'd given her, her hidden illness had healed rapidly and her power had reached the peak of body forging. She just needed one push to reach the meridian opening level. She'd thought it would take more time, but here was the chance already. She got a little shy and asked if maybe I could spare one pill for her. I agreed without hesitation. That was actually part of my reason for coming here. I wanted to help her break through. She'd done a lot for me, and I wanted to return the favor. Of course, I had some other thoughts too. She was clearly touched. The way she looked at me changed. Her eyes went soft and warm. Dongmei watched from the side, quietly panicking. She could tell her mistress was falling for me. Shiriwa thanked me, and I pretended to be annoyed, telling her that between us, saying thanks was too formal. She smiled warmly and said she'd take me to a room. I told her not to rush. First, I needed a rice cooker. I went into the kitchen and came back with one. She stared at me, confused. I explained sheepishly that I didn't have a proper alchemy cauldron, so this would have to do. Both women's faces went stiff. A rice cooker for refining pills? They clearly had doubts. Huangfu Shiriwa took me down to the basement. It was spacious and quiet, perfect for refining medicine. I told them to wait upstairs, closed the door, and got to work. I set up the rice cooker, sorted the herbs, and tossed them in. A wisp of true fire appeared at my fingertip, wrapping around the cooker to melt down the ingredients. Before long, a rich medicinal fragrance filled the room and drifted upstairs. The whole afternoon flew by. By the time I came out, it was dark and I was exhausted. Refining pills was no easy job. I carried the blackened rice cooker upstairs. It was full of pills. Shiriwa had already cooked dinner and called me over warmly. I sat down and wolfed everything down without any manners. She didn't mind at all and even put more food on my plate. I pushed the rice cooker toward her and explained. The yellow pills were for breakthroughs and the green ones were detoxification pills. She could take some of each. She grabbed the cooker, The smell hit her immediately. Inside were dozens of pills, mostly green, with about 10 yellow ones. She took a yellow pill right away and swallowed it. Powerful medicinal energy surged through her, and she quickly sat down cross-legged to channel it. Soon, a powerful aura exploded outward. She'd broken through to the meridian opening level. Dongmei congratulated her excitedly. Shuriwei stood up, feeling the new power inside her, thrilled. She thanked me sincerely, but I waved it off and told her it was nothing. Then I grinned and suggested she go take a bath first. She looked down and realized her skin was covered in sticky, foul-smelling gunk, impurities pushed out during the breakthrough. Her face turned bright red, and she bolted for the bathroom. I couldn't help laughing. Then Dongmei spoke up timidly, asking if she could have a pill too. I kept a straight face and told her no. These pills were too precious to waste on her. She got all flustered and threatened to tell Shuriwei on me. Seeing the usually proud bodyguard acting like a pouting housewife was hilarious, so I changed my tone and said I'd give her one, if she begged. She looked at me in disbelief, but then, to my surprise, she actually said it. I want to get stronger. Please give me a pill. I laughed and told her one wasn't enough. She should take two. Her anger vanished instantly. She grabbed 2 pills like she was afraid I'd change my mind, then swallowed one immediately and started cultivating. Soon another powerful aura burst out. Dongmei broke through to the peak of body forging. She was ecstatic. She saved the second pill for later, planning to use it once her level stabilized to push into meridian opening. I wrinkled my nose and told her she stank. Go shower. She looked down, saw the sticky residue on herself, turned red with embarrassment, and rushed to the bathroom. About half an hour later, both women came out. Shuriwei could barely look at me, still mortified about earlier. I was about to say goodbye to avoid the awkwardness, but she stopped me. She said she wanted to take me somewhere. When I asked where, she just smiled and said I'd find out. Half an hour later, the 3 of us arrived at a private estate, luxurious, with fake mountains, flowing water, and elegant pavilions everywhere. At the center was a large exhibition hall with a round stage in the middle surrounded by rows of seats. It looked like an auction house. Shuriwei explained that this was Jiangdu's biggest underground auction, held once every 6 months. Rare and valuable items always showed up here. She thought since I didn't have a proper alchemy cauldron, maybe I'd find one tonight. That got me excited. Then she mentioned I could also sell things here. I immediately pulled out the pills I'd refined that afternoon and asked her to sell them for me. She frowned and said it seemed like a waste to sell such precious pills. I told her not to worry. I could always make more, and I'd kept some for myself. She took the pills and went off with Dongmei to find the organizers, leaving me to wander the hall. The place was already filling up with well-dressed guests, clearly wealthy and important people. I noticed quite a few martial artists among them too. While I was looking around, a voice cut in from the side. "What's a piece of trash like you doing here?" I turned and frowned. It was Jiang Junlan, the youngest daughter of the Jiang family's first branch. Next to her stood a tall young man who looked like he came from money. He asked who I was, and Junlan loudly announced that I was the Yi family's illegitimate son who'd married into her second uncle's household. Her voice carried, and people nearby started staring. Many had heard of the famous Jiang family's live-in son-in-law. Their looks ranged from curious to jealous to openly contemptuous. The tall guy, Wang Zihao, looked down at me with amusement and called me a lucky waste. I told him to mind his own business. Junlan exploded, calling me a dead waste for daring to talk to her, Brother Zihao, like that. I glanced at her sideways and said, "I just did. What are you going to do about it?" Wang Zihao held Junlan back and gave me an arrogant look. He told me I wasn't worthy of Miss Jiang and that I should be smart and get a divorce. Otherwise, once his older brother came back, I'd regret it. After Wang Zihao's threat, people around us were nodding quietly. His older brother Wang Ziding was the Wang family's eldest son, talented in both business and martial arts, one of the best among Jiangdu's younger generation. Among all of Jiang Juanyao's suitors, he was considered the most suitable match. Both families had even been in favor of it. But then Junyao had her accident, and Wang Ziding went abroad. Now that she was awake, he'd surely come back. Everyone figured if Wang Ziding targeted me, I'd have no chance. They all watched to see how I'd react. I raised an eyebrow. "Are you trying to tell me what to do?" Wang Zihao's face turned cold. "Not telling, ordering." Divorce Miss Jiang, and you get to live. Refuse, and not just you. Even the Yi family will be destroyed. Jiang Junlun mocked me, saying I'd better listen or I'd regret it. I didn't say a word. I just raised my middle finger, eyes full of challenge. People were surprised by my nerve. Some wondered if I actually had something to back it up. Others figured I was just an idiot who thought marrying into the Jiang family meant I could stand up to the Wang family. What they didn't say out loud was that even the Jiang family was careful around the Wangs. Among the three great ancient clans, the Wang family was the strongest, a martial arts family with a meridian opening master. Only 4 powers in all of Jiangdu had that level of strength. Wang Zihao grinned and said he hadn't met anyone this arrogant in a long time. He wanted to see where my confidence came from. He waved over the security captain. The captain came running and asked what he needed. Wang Zihao pointed at me and said he suspected I'd snuck in and told him to check. The captain asked who I was. Wang Zihao smirked and introduced me as Jiangdu's famous live-in son-in-law. Once the captain heard I had no real background, his attitude changed instantly. He demanded to see my invitation. I shrugged and told him I didn't have one. I came with someone else. He pounced on that, loudly insisting everyone needed their own invitation and accusing me of sneaking in. That wasn't entirely true. Powerful martial masters or well-connected people could bring guests. But he didn't think someone like me could possibly have that kind of connection. Even Wang Zihao couldn't bring extra people in. I calmly repeated that someone brought me. He said I was making excuses and came at me, threatening to teach me a lesson. People around us looked entertained, waiting to see if I was still so bold. I warned him not to try it, or there'd be serious consequences. He sneered and reached for me. I grabbed his wrist and snapped it. A clean crack rang out. Before he could even scream, I sent him flying across the room. Dead silence. Everyone stared in shock. Someone had actually fought back in here. I walked over and looked down at him as he struggled to get up. Now do you understand? He glared at me with hatred and spat that I was finished for causing trouble here. Guards were already rushing over. Wang Zihao laughed and called me suicidal for starting a fight at this place. Junlun sneered that I was a brainless idiot. Just as the guards were about to jump me, a sharp voice cut through the noise. I dare anyone to touch him. Everyone turned, and their eyes lit up. 2 stunning women were walking toward us. It was Huangfu Shuriwei and Dongmei. Shuriwei commanded the guards to back off. An invisible pressure radiated from her, and they instinctively stepped aside. She came to my side, dropped her cold expression, and asked with concern what happened. I gave her a quick rundown. Her face turned icy. The security captain, recognizing her extraordinary presence, didn't dare attack, but warned her not to interfere. Shuriwei said coolly, "And what if I do?" Wang Zihao tried to smooth-talk her, saying it wasn't worth offending this place's owner over a worthless son-in-law. She turned to him with a freezing voice. "Are you trying to tell me what to do?" He froze, face darkening. Junlun lost it and called Shuriwei a slur, saying she was courting death for disrespecting Brother Zihao. In a flash, Dongmei appeared in front of her and slapped her hard across the face. Blood trickled from Junlun's nose and mouth. Before she could react, Dongmei slapped her again, saying she deserved it for disrespecting her mistress. Junlun went crazy and lunged at Dongmei, but she was no match. She took several more slaps in seconds. Dongmei's eyes went cold. "Say one more word and I'll kill you." That shut Junlun up. She turned to Wang Zihao, face swollen and teary, begging him to stand up for her. Wang Zihao glared at Dongmei and warned that Junlun was a Jiang family daughter. Wasn't she afraid of the Jiang family's anger? Dongmei's face was cold. She said she'd never heard of the Jiang family. Wang Zihao laughed angrily and pointed out that the Jiang family was one of Jiangdu's 3 great ancient clans and had recently partnered with the Huangfu family from Jinling. He said she was way too arrogant to claim ignorance. Dongmei played along with a sly look, saying she had indeed heard of the Huangfu family, a powerful clan from Jinling, especially their eldest daughter Huangfu Shuriwei, supposedly one of Jinling's finest. I almost rolled my eyes at the shameless flattery. Wang Zihao seized on that, saying the Jiang family had a full partnership with the Huangfu family, so offending the Jiangs meant offending the Huangfus too. He told the women to apologize or face the consequences. Junlun piled on, bragging that her brother was president of the Jiang group, personally in charge of the Huangfu partnership, and even knew the Huangfu eldest daughter. She demanded Dongmei apologize and slap herself 10 times, or she'd never leave Jiangdu. I found the whole thing hilarious. I wondered what kind of faces they'd make if they knew the very Huangfu daughter they kept name-dropping was standing right in front of them. Dongmei's face turned cold. She called it nonsense, saying someone as noble as the Huangfu eldest daughter would never associate with the likes of the Jiang family. Then she stepped forward and slapped Junlan twice more. Junlan was shaking with rage. She'd never been humiliated like this in her entire life. Wang Ziheo's face was ugly too. He turned to the security captain and demanded to know why nobody was doing anything about the violence. The captain snapped to attention and was about to order his men to grab us, when a voice boomed from across the hall. "Stop." Everyone froze. A refined-looking middle-aged man walked toward us. He wore a purple robe, had light purple hair, and looked like a scholar, warm and approachable at first glance. But most people here knew the truth. Behind that gentle appearance was someone ruthless and powerful. People on the streets called him Dragon 9. In Jiangdu, almost nobody dared disrespect him. Even the heads of the two great societies would be polite to his face. The security captain rushed over to report trouble. Dragon 9 cut him off with a sharp, "Shut up," then walked straight to Huangfu Shiriyue and apologized for his people's rudeness. Shiriyue waved it off casually, saying every place had a few bad apples. Everyone stared wide-eyed. No wonder she'd been so fearless. She knew Dragon 9 personally, and they clearly had a close relationship. The security captain went white. Wang Ziheo and Junlan turned pale too, realizing they'd made a terrible mistake. Dragon 9 promised Shiriyue he'd handle everything. Then his face went ice-cold as he turned to the captain and demanded to hear exactly what happened. The captain told him everything, not daring to hide a thing. "You abused your position. Go take your punishment, then get out," Dragon 9 said flatly, like he was talking about the weather. The captain dropped to his knees, begging for another chance. Dragon 9's expression darkened. "I won't repeat myself." The captain went silent, stood up, and left without another word. Then Dragon 9 turned his cold gaze on Wang Ziheo and Junlan. Wang Ziheo forced a smile and tried to explain, but Dragon 9 cut him off. "I won't pursue today's matter. Go home and tell old Master Wang. The favor I owed him is now settled." Wang Ziheo looked like he'd been punched. He wanted to argue, but one look at Dragon 9's icy eyes shut him up. He took Junlan and quietly retreated. Everyone was shaken. The so-called Wang family young master didn't dare make a sound in front of Dragon 9. They were all curious about Shiriyue's identity now. Who was she, to make Dragon 9 this respectful? And how on earth did a live-in son-in-law like me know someone like her? Dragon 9 looked at me with curiosity. Shiriyue nodded and said, "That's right, he's Master Yi." His eyes lit up. He eagerly reached out both hands. "Master Yi, I'm Long Jiao." "It's an honor." I shook his hand and gave my name simply, Yi Chu. Everyone was stunned again. Wang Ziheo looked like his eyes were about to pop. How could a worthless son-in-law get this kind of treatment from Dragon 9? Just then, a bell sounded in the center of the hall. The auction was about to begin, and everyone moved toward the round stage. Dragon 9 led us to the best seats, then excused himself to take care of some business. I looked at Shiriyue, puzzled. "When did I become Master Yi?" She grinned. "You can refine medicine and treat diseases. If you're not a master, what are you?" I thought about it. Fair point, I guess. But being called master at not even 20 felt like being called old. Then a voice came from behind us. "Well, isn't that Huangfu Shiriyue?" We turned to see 3 beautiful women approaching. 2 of them were just as stunning as Shiriyue. I was surprised. I recognized all 3. Zhuge Jia and her secretary, plus Yin Bingwan. I had no idea how they'd ended up together. Shiriyue's expression cooled instantly. "Zhuge Jia, you really are everywhere." Zhuge Jia sat down nearby with an elegant air and smiled, saying she was in Jiangdu on family business, and it had nothing to do with Shiriyue. Shiriyue just snorted and ignored her. Yin Bingwan nodded at me politely. "We meet again, young friend." I nodded back. Zhuge Jia was surprised they knew each other and asked about it. Bingwan said we just crossed paths a few times. Zhuge Jia looked me over curiously. Our last meeting had clearly left an impression. She also seemed to figure that if Shiriyue valued me this much, I must have more going on than just medical skills. I couldn't resist teasing her. "Looking for a doctor's visit? I can write you a prescription right now. I'll even give you a 20% discount since you know Madame Huang." She blushed, remembering what happened last time, and glared at me before quickly looking away. Bingwan noticed the reaction with surprise. She'd never seen the cool and collected Zhuge Jia look flustered. Shuriwei asked how I knew Zhuge Jia. I told her the story briefly. Shuriwei warned me to stay away from her, calling her trouble. Zhuge Jia overheard and coldly demanded an explanation. Shuriwei just said she knew exactly what kind of person she was. Zhuge Jia's face went frighteningly cold, and I thought she was about to blow up, but then she suddenly smiled. You're just afraid I'll get close to this boy, aren't you? I was only a little curious before, but now I've changed my mind. She turned to me with a dazzling smile, stood up, and extended her hand. Dr. Yi, my name is Zhuge Jia. I'd like to be friends. People nearby were stunned. Such a gorgeous woman, approaching me on her own? Across the stage, Wang Zihao was burning with jealousy, raging silently about how a worthless son-in-law like me didn't deserve this. I was caught off guard for a second, then quickly shook her hand enthusiastically. Of course, her hand was warm and smooth. Without thinking, I sent a thread of true energy through to check her body constitution, and my eyes lit up. She had a special constitution, the light body. It was just as rare and powerful as the moonlight body. I couldn't believe my luck. I'd barely started going out and had already encountered 3 women with special constitutions. Jiang Junyao was too difficult to deal with for now, but Shuriwei and Zhuge Jia were possibilities. If I could get close to them, the resentful dragon energy inside me might calm down, and I wouldn't have to suffer so much during cultivation. Just thinking about it made my eyes go hot with excitement. Zhuge Jia actually shivered. My gaze was apparently scaring her. She tried to pull her hand back, but couldn't. She kept her composure on the surface and politely asked me to let go. I snapped out of it and released her hand, apologizing quickly. I said I'd just thought of something exciting and spaced out. Couldn't afford to leave a bad impression. Her eye twitched. She had a feeling whatever I was excited about wasn't anything good. But she took a breath, pulled out her phone, and we exchanged contact info. She told me she had some influence in Jiangdu, and I could reach out if I ever needed help, throwing a challenging glance at Shuriwei while she said it. I sat back down happily, only to feel a resentful stare boring into me. I turned and found Shuriwei watching me without blinking. Dongmei was glaring daggers too. I coughed awkwardly. Before I could explain, the bell rang and the auction officially started. A beautiful hostess named Dandan took the stage and announced the beginning. I jumped on the chance to change the subject. Shuriwei, the auction's starting. We'd better pay close attention so we don't miss anything good. I stared at the stage intensely. Shuriwei gave me one more resentful look, then turned her attention to the stage too. The first item was a luminous pearl, fist-sized, pale green. When the lights went out, it glowed softly in the darkness, its inner patterns clearly visible, beautiful and mysterious. The experts said it was a rare mineral from the western mountains that could calm the mind and nourish the body over time. Bidding started at 10 million and quickly went crazy. It sold for 100 million to a jade dealer. Next was a Han Dynasty antique that sold for 150 million. The auction rolled on. 8 or 9 items total, all incredibly valuable. The most expensive was a set of imperial green jade prayer beads from the Tang Dynasty, which went for 400 million. Then the hostess announced a pre-Qin era antique. She pulled back the red cloth to reveal a small bronze tripod cauldron with 3 legs and 2 handles. It was about the size of a wash basin, covered in rust and carved with ancient patterns. It looked old and mysterious. But there was a problem. It had several cracks, was missing 1 ear and 1 leg, and looked like it could fall apart any second. People had been excited to hear pre-Qin antique, but once they saw the condition, interest died immediately. Even if it was genuine, a broken-down cauldron like that had no real collection value. Dandan was clearly disappointed by the lack of enthusiasm, but went on with her introduction. She confirmed experts had verified it was genuinely from the pre-Qin era, though the exact period couldn't be determined. Starting bid was 10 million with minimum raises of 1 million. Nobody bid. The silence stretched on. This was the 10th item, and everyone knew the really good stuff was still coming. No one wanted to waste money on a broken tripod. Just when it seemed like it would go unsold, a voice rang out. 11 million. Everyone turned to see who was foolish enough to bid on the broken tripod. When they saw it was me, some laughed inside, calling me a rich idiot. I didn't care. My spiritual senses told me that little bronze cauldron wasn't as simple as it looked. Plus, I needed an alchemy cauldron, so why not? Shuriwe frowned and said it seemed too damaged. I shrugged and told her it was fine, as long as it worked. Nobody dared compete with me after the earlier scene, so I got it for just 11 million. Then came the 11th item, the real highlight. A worker brought up an elegant purple wooden box carved with beautiful patterns. When Dandan finally opened it, a wave of herbal fragrance drifted out. Inside lay a pale purple herb. My eyes went wide. Is that youth-preserving grass? This stuff was incredibly rare. Dandan confirmed it. Eating it could keep you looking young for 10 years, and refining it into pill form would make the effect even better. The place erupted. Every woman in the room was practically on fire with desire. I could hear the breathing of the women next to me getting faster. Shuriwe immediately whispered to me, asking if I could refine it into pills. I said yes, but I need some supplementary herbs. Her eyes lit up instantly. Bidding started at 100 million and climbed fast. 200 million, 300 million, 400 million. Mostly women bidding. Then Shuriwe's calm voice cut through. 500 million. The whole room went silent. Adding 100 million at once was beyond bold. I was secretly impressed. My big sister was seriously loaded. For a moment I wondered if being a kept man might not be so bad. Nobody dared counter her bid. But then a lazy voice spoke up. 600 million. It was Zhuge sitting right next to us. The crowd was stunned. Two incredibly wealthy women, side by side. Shuriwe glared coldly and raised to 700 million. Zhuge didn't flinch. 800 million. She said it like it was pocket change. 900 million. 1 billion. Everyone's jaws dropped. Shuriwe's brow finally furrowed. Zhuge, are you really going to fight me on this? Zhuge smiled innocently. Fight? Isn't the highest bidder supposed to win? Shuriwe's face went ice cold with barely contained fury. Backstage, Dragon 9 was apparently shaking his head, wondering how both these women ended up at his auction. Seeing them about to go at each other's throats, I stepped in. I whispered that they should both stop. Give the herb to me, and once I refined it into pills, they'd each get one. Shuriwe thought about it and agreed. Zhuge was skeptical. She could tell my relationship with Shuriwe was closer than ours, so she wasn't sure I'd keep my word. I smiled and promised her I wouldn't cheat her, and pointed out she could always find me at the Jiang family home if I did. She thought about that and agreed. The youth-preserving grass went to Zhuge for 1 billion. The audience was confused about why the fierce bidding war suddenly fizzled, but since we'd been whispering, nobody knew what happened. Attention quickly shifted to the next item, a martial arts manual. It could only train someone up to peak body forging, but that was still enough to drive people crazy. In Jiangdu, having even one peak body forging expert was enough to keep most people from messing with your family. After fierce competition, it sold for 1.2 billion. Then Dandan announced the final item, the grand finale. Everyone's eyes locked on the stage. She pulled back the red cloth to reveal 8 small jade bottles arranged in 2 groups, blue and white. Labels were attached, but too small to read from a distance. She pointed to the white bottles first. These contain detoxification pills. They can cure almost any poison. The crowd buzzed with excitement. Even with some exaggeration, a pill like that was priceless. Then she pointed to the blue bottles. These contain small true origin pills. Body forging martial artists who take one can break through 1 or 2 minor levels. And peak body forging warriors have a chance of breaking through to become meridian opening masters. The place absolutely exploded. The room went quiet for a moment, then erupted. People were debating whether the pills were real. Could they truly help someone break through to master level? Some pointed out that Dragon 9 had a solid reputation and wouldn't exaggerate. Dandan settled the crowd by saying they'd prepared a demonstration. A thin middle-aged man walked onto the stage. Zhao Hu, one of Dragon 9's 2 most trusted fighters, a body forging stage 8 expert. Everyone immediately guessed what was about to happen. Dandan opened a blue bottle and handed him a pill. He swallowed it, sat cross-legged, and began absorbing the energy. Soon his aura started climbing, breaking past stage 8 into stage 9. The martial artists in the audience were practically panting with excitement. It's real. The pills are real. After the demonstration, Dandan announced the prices, 4 detoxification pills at 100 million starting bid each, and 3 small True Origin pills at 500 million each. Even at those insane prices, people went crazy bidding, mostly for the True Origin pills. The atmosphere was electric. It made sense. One pill could potentially create a meridian opening master. You couldn't put a price on that. Wang Zihao told Junlun to bid for him while he called his family. He was desperate to get one. I noticed Zhuge Jia getting ready to bid, but then she glanced at Shuriwei and saw her sitting perfectly calm, not making a move. That threw her off. She couldn't figure out why Shuriwei wasn't interested in something this valuable. She quietly dropped her plans and decided to watch. When Yun Bingwan asked why she wasn't bidding, she made up an excuse about spending too much on the youth-preserving grass. She added that since she wasn't a martial artist herself, it didn't make sense. Bingwan accepted that and jumped into the bidding herself. The price had already hit 800 million when Bingwan called out, 1 billion, jumping 200 million in one go, shocking everyone. People recognized her immediately. The Cloud family widow was famous in Jiangdu. Despite being an illegitimate daughter, she'd taken control of the Cloud family young and turned them from the weakest of the 4 great clans into the strongest in just a few years. She stood and politely asked the room to give her face and not compete. Most people backed down. The Cloud family had a rumored connection to the Long family. Years ago, the Yi family had been the top clan, but after crossing the Cloud family, they'd fallen to last place, supposedly because the Long family had intervened. Bingwan got the first True Origin pill. The second pill brought another fierce round. When the price hit 1 billion, Wang Zihao stood up and tried the same move, asking everyone to show the Wang family respect. A scarred, dark-skinned man laughed in his face. Your family needs it, but so does mine. He introduced himself as Scarface Chun, the top hall master of the White Wolf Society, ruthless and powerful, a peak body forging expert. He wasn't afraid of the Wangs. Wang Zihao backed down awkwardly, forcing a smile. Scarface Chin bid 1,100 million, and nobody dared challenge the White Wolf Society. He got the second pill. The third and final pill was the most intense. Wang Zihao bid like a madman, eyes bloodshot, pushing the price to 1,200 million. At that level, people started dropping out. Most couldn't come up with that much cash, and the pill's effect still wasn't guaranteed. It only offered a chance at breakthrough, not a certainty. The hall went quiet. Dandan asked twice if anyone else wanted to bid. Wang Zihao started to relax, thinking he'd won. Then a voice broke the silence. 1,220 million.